Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
I'd like to welcome you to the Tuesday, September 23rd, 2008 meeting of the Glendale City Council. Mr. City Clerk, if you could call the roll.
Council members Najarian.
Here.
Quintero. Weaver.
Here.
Yusefian.
Here.
Mayor Drain.
Here. Could we have the flag salute, and that is led this time by Councilmember Yusefian.
Please stand, put your hand on your heart, and follow after me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for this evening's invocation. Edwin Wayteal, an American naturalist, photographer, and Pulitzer Prize-winning writer, remarked that for us people, autumn is a time of harvest, of gathering together, and for nature it is a time of sowing and scattering abroad. As the first day of autumn passed quietly, we went about our daily lives hardly noticing. But tonight we pray in reverence for the beautiful pageantry of autumn and its bounty. As the days grow shorter and the weather crisper, let us at this time harvest the love we have for our family members, friends, and neighbors. Let us pause, and as we gather together throughout the joyous occasions with the ones we love in the fall season, let us pray, pause, and give thanks to that which enables us to do these things. Let us pray that in the season of harvest we remember to treat our environment with respect, and that we have the strength to be guided tonight as we make our city's most important decisions. And as always, we pray for peace and harmony throughout the world, in Glendale and beyond. Thank you.
Mr. Kasakian, could we hear your report, please?
The agenda for the September 23rd, 2008 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, September 18th, 2008 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you very much. Our first item?
At 3 is presentation and appointments, and at 3 is agenda preview for the meetings of September 30, 2008.
Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, as you know, our policy, if you will, is that our presentations we reserve to the fourth Tuesday of every month rather than doing them every Tuesday night. So it makes for a somewhat compacted fourth Tuesday meeting, but better the one Tuesday than every Tuesday, and we get to spend a little more time appreciating those who have given great service to our city. Mr. City Clerk, could you take us through 3A, please?
3A was agenda preview, and I will turn that over to City Manager. Oh, the first presentation?
Actually, let's do agenda preview. I beg your pardon. Mr. Starbird, and he is pointing to Ms. Beers, and as long as it's not Charlie Weaver to block. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, for the agenda preview for September 30th of 2008, we have a special meeting at 10:30 regarding a discussion of the formation of a police advisory board. In the afternoon at 2:30, there are no business agenda items for the Glendale Housing Authority. We have 2 business agenda items for the Glendale Redevelopment Agency. One is Director of Development Services regarding Embassy Suites Hotel, helipad screen materials, and secondly, Professional Services Agreement for Financial Advisory Services and Bond Counsel for the Central Glendale Redevelopment Project area. For the City Council meeting at 6 p.m., we have a number of consent items. First is the Director of Public Works, installation of 3 speed humps on Harvard Street between Kenilworth Avenue and Pacific. Secondly, again, Director of Public Works, installation of 3 speed humps on Alameda Avenue between Glenwood Road and Kenneth Road. Director of Public Works, installation of speed humps on Patterson Avenue between Concord Street and Kenilworth Avenue. Director of Human Relations, Civil Service Commission and Human Resources Department Annual Activity Report for fiscal year 07-08. City Attorney, the need to revise the City of Glendale's Conflict of Interest Code. Director of Public Works, demolition at 624 and 630 Geneva Street. Continuing on consent items, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services, proposed grant application to the Los Angeles County Regional Park and Open Space District. Director of Parks and Recreation, Landscape Maintenance of Glendale Water and Power, Fire, and General Government Contract Facilities. Lastly, under consent items, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services, 2008 holiday decorations on Brand Boulevard. Under action items, we have a number of items. Director of Parks, boxing and wrestling in the City of Glendale. The city attorney, approval and findings regarding 6410 San Fernando Road, conditional use permit. And this is regarding Ambrosia Restaurant. Director of Public Works, Proposition 1B, Traffic Light Synchronization Program. Director of Public Works, intention to grant a franchise to Pacific Pipeline System for the operation and maintenance of an oil pipeline, Line 63. Director of Public Works, parking meter rate revisions. And lastly, Director of Community Development and Housing, smoking ordinance. And under reports, we have one item, Mr. Mayor. Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services, report on the status of proposed fees for use of sports fields by approved community sports groups. And that concludes my report.
Wow. So, bring a sleeping bag when you come on the 30th. Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Beers. Mr. Kasakian.
Mr. Mayor, at 3B is presentation by Nestle to the Police Department.
Okay. Very good. If we could have Captain Nicolaisen, if you wouldn't mind. And
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'm Leif Nicolaisen from the Police Department. I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Joe Zamet and Mauricio Cascapera. Please come here, Mauricio. They're both from Nestle Corporation.
Mr. Draymond, on behalf of Nestle, we'd like to give you this donation on behalf of the city for your police department. Over the course of the last year, we've had the good opportunity to actually establish a relationship with your police department, with Captain Nicolaisen, Lieutenant Montecualo, many others in your organization, and how we value our relationship with Glendale as well as with the police department here. Thank you.
Well, we thank you, and I will certainly come down and accept that. Let me thank you both on council and on microphone. We want to thank Nestle for partnering with our city. We certainly appreciate that, and I will turn this over to, that's a big thank you. Let me turn this over to our city clerk, and please come say a few words, if you would.
As I mentioned earlier, Nestle being tenants here in Glendale, feel very fortunate to have our position here in Glendale City, as well as our relationship with the police department here. Over the course of the last year, we've done many exercises with the police department. We've helped with certain events, SWAT drill at our building, also working with the police department on their Baker to Vegas run in terms of their New York City to Washington, D.C. bike race. Working with Lieutenant Montecualo, Sergeant Wang, as well as Officer Shine as examples. We've actually got to know about programs within the city, how the police department actually helps the city over and above its normal duties, and we're just happy to be able to help and present some, to help you guys a little bit, and also to be able to participate in your involvement in the efforts to improve the community. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Najarian.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to compliment Nestle on their turning of the leaf, so to speak, over the past few years. Whereas they were once a quiet, secular corporate entity, they have really blossomed and been involved in many events. I know one that I attended not too long ago was the National Night Out. And they were kind enough to donate waters and ice creams and other things for the community members. And I met one of your representatives there who was 100% behind the city and indicated that if ever the city needs anything, Nestle will be there to help. So I do applaud your rebirth into the community, and we applaud you. We're very proud to have Nestle in our community.
And that's in all the areas of our community, too. When we were fortunate enough to be able to bring National Night Out back to the far north part of Glendale, Nestle was there that night, too, this most recent National Night Out, and made that a huge success. So we do thank you, and thank you again for the support. We appreciate that. Mr. City Clerk.
At 3C is a presentation by Mr. Dave Ahern and Ms. Mary Abrams regarding Glendale Relay for Life, September 27th and 28th, 2008, at Shoal Canyon Ball Fields, located at 3200 East Glen Oaks.
Mr. Ahern and Ms. Abrams and company, please come forward.
Mr. Mayor, members of council,
not quite a cast of thousands, but
Nearly.
close.
Nearly.
Close to it. So let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Dave Ahern, and I'm one of the committee co-chairs. And let's have the other committee members introduce themselves quickly, and then you should meet them. These are some of the best people that I know.
I'm Mari Abrams, and I joined Dave as one of the co-chairs for Relay for Life this year.
Right up.
I'm kind of sad. I'm Linda Patrick, and I was tri-chair last year, and the year before, and the year before, and the year before. Hi, I'm Diana Valentine. With Reader Development, and I'm one of the food chairs this year.
I am Danielle Anziano with the American Cancer Society.
Marianne Robertson with Glendale Memorial Hospital. I'm the survivorship chair.
Hi, Alina Armandarian with Glendale Memorial and Survivor Committee member.
Hi, I'm Kathy Wong. I represent the Glendale Public Library. This year we made our goal and way past it. And he's my co-captain.
Yeah, co-captain Laura Martinowicz, also from the library.
Very good, very good. Tell us what's in store for us and everyone else who participates in Relay for Life this year.
We are here with our committee and the American Cancer Society staff to invite everyone here to Relay for Life this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. We have some amazing new and exciting things for this year. The city, so many different organizations in the city have really come on board to support Relay for Life. We have a fantastic kids camp that is sponsored by the Joe Mitchell Foundation and the Los Angeles County Children's Museum, and the Parks Department.
Get me in trouble.
We have wonderful exercise activities that will be going on through the day with All About You Wellness Boot Camp and meditation sessions that are going on in the evening to help us bring in the spirit of the event. Our committee, and of course Mayor John Draymond, who is our honorary event co-chair, thank you, invites you to join us in a special fundraiser for Relay for Life. It's an evening for 4 people with the mayor, 2 couples. There is flyers on the back table there, and you can turn them into the city manager's office. We have some here. It includes dinner for 2 at Gennaro's Restaurant, a Broadway show for 2 at the Amundsen Theater, and limo transportation. So it should be a fantastic event. Mayor, thank you so much for helping us support that.
And by the way, that's the show is 9 to 5 with a score by Dolly Parton, and this is its world premiere before it goes to Broadway. So it's these are excellent seats. So
I appreciate that.
Well, Mr. Mayor, this is our 5th annual Relay for Life event here in Glendale. We expect to have a great turnout. We expect to have a fantastic event. As always, the food's going to be tremendous. The Jewel City Kiwanis are preparing the lunch. Damon's and a host of other Glendale eateries are providing the dinner. We have a midnight dinner put on by the City Employees Association with the famous Michael Haney taco soup. And the Glendale firefighters are doing the pancake breakfast the next morning. Shockingly, we have coffee from Starbucks, and kind of inside joke there, folks. So it's going to be a great event. The kids' camp's going to be tremendous. We've got lots of activities, and it's a great community event. We appreciate the council's support and leadership in putting this on for the 5th year, the support of the executive team, and the event is growing in the community now. We have all 3 hospitals involved in the event. We have community members across a broad cross-section involved in this activity. So we're looking forward to a fantastic event. It starts at 10 o'clock at Shoal Canyon on September 27th. That's this Saturday morning. So we look forward to seeing everyone there and look forward to having another great weekend here in Glendale. Thank you again for your support.
very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Najarian.
It's a great event, and Mayor Draymond, I look forward to seeing you there, but let's be clear on some of the logistics of this. What you do is you bring your tent and your camping gear, and you get to Shoal Canyon Park by about 10 a.m. You pick out a campsite, you set it up, and then the relay begins. There's opening ceremonies, and obviously the whole point is to raise funds for cancer. Mr. Ahern and Diana talked about some of the food that's going to be there. The value of the food alone, and you are catered like no camper was ever catered to, is probably $50 a person at the very least. So keep that in mind when you're making a donation. All donations certainly are accepted, but it's great. It's a complete enclosed community. Your children are safe. They have activities with the Children's Museum, our rangers, etc., and you get a chance to go around. There are booths when you're not walking and doing the laps for your team. You'll have elected officials and city staff to talk to on an informal basis, and we talk shop all the time. Don't feel restricted about not discussing any issues with us, but we're all there together. There's a great evening show. Are you having a movie this evening? No movie, but there are activities throughout the evening. You wake up, the firemen are making you breakfast, you pick up your tent, and you go home after a great 24 hours knowing that you have really made a difference in finding the cure for cancer. And Mr. Mayor, it will be a lot of fun. I look forward to pitching a tent with you.
I think it will be nice, but they are not showing a movie, but they are showing replays of council meetings. Best of, if they can find one. So,
The bloopers.
the bloopers, the outtakes. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. We hope to see you there. Next item, please.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, taken out of order per your direction. At I is a 3I Service Award presentation to Mark Falkel, Electrical Services Planner, and it's from Glendale Water and Power for 40 years of service.
Well,
Honorable Mayor and council people and city staff, I'm Richard Germont, Principal Engineer with GWP, and it gives me a great deal of honor to talk a little bit about Mark Falco in his 40 years that he's been here. I'm sorry, is that better?
Artie, why don't you give me a portable?
Coming down here? Oh, thank you. Mark joined GWP in 1968 as a maintenance man and worked in the pole digging crew. In 1968, he was also promoted into the meter readers in the customer service section of GWP. In 1969, he transferred to Public Works Department and worked as an engineering aid surveyor. He marked survey hillsides, maps, issued permits for sewers, house moving, and assisted customers at the public counter. In 1972, Mark was promoted to engineering aid and worked in the Public Works until 1977. He updated drawings, maps, issued permits for sewers and house moving, and assisted customers at the counter. In 1977 to 1978, Mark transferred to the Parks Department as a draftsman, assistant engineer technician. He prepared renderings and presented drawings and maps for park facilities, including landscaping and irrigation. I came to work in the city in 1979, so about that time I knew who Mark was. I didn't know him too well. He was working in a different section than I was. When he had done his work for the draftsman in parks, his position was eliminated by Prop 13. So he ended up returning to GWP as a meter reader in the customer service section, and he worked there from 1978 to 1979. In 1979, Mark was reinstated as an assistant engineer technician in GWP Engineering and has since been promoted within the engineering section. In about 1980, 1986, I began to know who Mark was. Mark was an engineering technician. He worked in the streetlight section. He did drafting, he did marking, he did all kinds of things. And in 1986, he was promoted to senior technician and doing USA work. And I'm not sure how many of you know what USA, but USA is Underground Service Alert. And it's very important. A person has to really understand the electric utility. He has to know what's underground. He has to know how to read maps. He has to know how to use special equipment that is used for locating this stuff. And Mark was very good at it. And he learned the hard way. I don't think he got too much training from anybody else when he started out.
little bit here and there. So he did that from 80 to 86. In 86 to about 2002, he was promoted to senior engineer, and that was partially my doing. I like to take a little bit of credit for some of that because of the work that he did. In doing this, he would constantly have to look at different areas of the city all the time because he'd get in anywhere from, I don't think we were as busy as we are today, but he was doing probably anywhere from 5 to 12 to 15 tickets a day. It doesn't sound like much, but each one of those had to be researched, and then he'd have to go out and mark those, and he only has 48 hours. So if he doesn't get it done within 48 hours, it's a state law, we have to have it done, and we could be fined for that. We've never been fined. And also, I don't know, have you ever had a hit?
Maybe one.
Maybe one out of years of doing this. So he did an excellent job. He was responsible for notifying engineers of potential problems. He also acted as a liaison for the department because he would always run into contractors and other people out there. He performed engineering field checks and designs of electrical projects and cost estimates. In 2002, 2008, I lost him to the service planner position. He got promoted into service planner. He worked for the customer service group in engineering. He started working with customers that needed to come in and get connected up to the electrical system. He would work with them at the counter and help them to determine how that interface was going to happen. Around the first part of the year, I ran into a problem, and the problem was that my USA person got promoted out of the group. And I have some backups, but they don't do it all the time. They don't do it permanently. So I asked Mark if he'd be willing to come back into the section and help me to do this important job, and Mark thankfully said he would. So since January, he's been working back in USA. We also have a new feature that we call Special Locate. And a lot of times we'll get a customer like maybe DreamWorks and someone like that who's having work done on their property, and they need us to help locate special electrical duct banks or things like this, and so Mark also does that. And it's not always an easy job. He also has to locate fiber nowadays, which also is not an easy job because fiber doesn't have any electrical going through it. So now he has to depend on other ways to do it. So Mark's been a great help. Mark's been married for 40 years to Debbie, and he has 9 children, 7 daughters and 2 sons. He has 14 grandchildren. He has 9 grandsons and 5 granddaughters, and many of his children has worked for the city in Parks and Rec. And I understand that Michael has worked for the city approximately 4 years, started out in Parks, and now he's working in the Public Works and Maintenance area. So with that, I'd like to give you a chance to introduce your family before we go through this. So
I appreciate that, and naturally you want to do the first things first. So I'd like to introduce my wonderful wife, Debbie. And my mother, Carol Jean Pelkel, and my sister, Sandy Teft, my daughter, Cindy, other daughter, Stephanie, daughter, Patricia, Kaylin, Carson, Bradley, and William. And so these are 3 of my children. The other ones weren't able to make it for different reasons. But one thing I really wanted to bring up in this little meeting here, it's sort of a nervous time for me, of course, being in front of you all, but just that it's been an honor and a pleasure to work for the city. Actually, my mother was the one that actually didn't get me the job, but she said, why don't you go down and see if the city has a job for you, 40 years ago. And it worked out that there was about 3 jobs I could sign up for, and of course, I got the hardest job first. That was digging holes. And then it was a meter reader, which was a fun job, and then the surveyor job, and we just kind of moved along with that. But one of the things with the city is that they've always looked out for me and other people. If there's been cutbacks or whatnot, somehow or another, there's always a job for you, and for me. And I've never lost a day's pay. I may have lost a little bit of money here and there, but always had a paycheck, which has really helped me through with my children and in the house and all that sort of thing. So Anyway, I appreciate it very much, and thank you.
Well, Councilmember Yusefi and I are here also to present you with, you can't let an acknowledgement of 40 years go by with just words. So your pin is here, and
here's a pin. This one's yours.
Okay.
The real stuff, the cash, sorry, but goes to your wife. And I want to thank you personally, as a councilman and as a former contractor, currently a contractor. I think you must have come at least to 6 of my jobs when you marked the USS, and I'm still alive, which means you marked them in the right place, which I did not dig, so I didn't get electrocuted. So thank you very much. Thank you. You did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Yusefi. And I'd just like to read the inscription. And, I don't know if you picked up on this, 40 years of employment with the City of Glendale, 40 years of marriage. Okay. 40-year service award presented to Mark Felkel. This certificate is an expression of sincere appreciation for 40 years of loyal and faithful service. May the future bring you a full measure of those endowments which long service and devotion to duty so richly deserve. And as mayor, I thank you. Mr. Kasakian.
Mr. Mayor and Council, at 3J is the service award presentation to Betty Arroyo, Senior Office Services Specialist, for 35 years of service to the city, and the honor and privilege of introducing her and speaking about her goes to myself because she works in my department. So with that. Now, Betty Arroyo was born in the state of Sonora, Mexico, and she has, when she told me this, and between her and the Felkels, I see now where the inspiration came for the reality show John and Kate Plus 8. She has 3 brothers and 8 sisters, and all but 3 of her siblings now reside in the United States. Her brother and 2 sisters are living happily in Mexico. Betty is happily married to her husband, Philip Michael Arroyo. She has 2 sons, of whom she is very proud. She always speaks of you very fondly in our office, Carlos Arturo Hernandez and Daniel Steven Hernandez. They are both teachers in LAUSD. And she has 1 daughter-in-law, Mercy, who is also a teacher. And she recently became a grandmother with the birth of her beautiful grandson, Xander Diego Hernandez, who was born in May of this year. Now, when Betty began working for the city of Glendale, Mr. Mayor and Council, the Dallas Cowboys and the Oakland A's and Lakers were all champions, as were UCLA in basketball and USC in football. The Oscar for Best Picture went to The French Connection, and moviegoers were just getting to know Vito Corleone in The Godfather. That's right, it was the summer of 1972. And Betty began working for Glendale Water and Power in customer service. She graduated from Hoover High School in 1973 and came to work for the city in July of that year as a temporary clerk, typist 1 in the library. She's worked in a number of departments, but she spent most of her time from 1980 to 1993 in the purchasing office, where she worked diligently. And in January 1993, she was transferred to the city clerk's office through the efforts of City Clerk Eileen Boyle, one of my predecessors, where she has remained ever since. Now, she started and jumped right into the position and was promoted twice, once in 1997 and once in 1999. She was promoted to the Senior Office Services Assistant position, where she tackles the duties including, but not limited to, legal advertising for the city, scanning and uploading our documents into FileNet for our archives, filing all the council materials, recorded documents, Glendale Municipal Code updates, and city ordinances and formal bids. So you ask yourselves, what does someone who is so dedicated to the city do for fun? Well, some of Betty's hobbies include hiking, gardening, spending time in Sedona, Arizona, of course family gatherings when you have a family as large as hers and as dedicated as she is to them, and of course music. And what are the things that I asked Betty that she's learned in 35 years, because I've only been here for 3+ years, and the wisdom that she imparted upon me was that 35 years of civil service work has taught me the true meaning of customer service and team spirit. It enriched my life in many ways and gave me the opportunity to make lifelong friendships. Mr. Mayor and Council, I have the privilege of having some of the most dedicated individuals working for my department, and if there are times that I'm fortunate enough to earn a kind word or a compliment for my department's performance, it's because I have competent, dedicated, sincere, ethical, and kind individuals in my department, like Betty Arroyo. Please join me in congratulating her on 35 years of service to the city of Glendale, and I'm sad to say that we're going to see her retire at the end of this year, so this is a little bittersweet. Thank you.
Who's going to run the city clerk's office, Artie? I'm just kidding. Thank you, Betty. This is a certificate, and it is an expression of our sincere appreciation for your 35 years of loyal and faithful service. May the future bring you a full measure of those endowments which long service and devotion to duty so richly deserve.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll give you a hug.
Oh, Betty, I was going to ask you, you're going to go for 40 now, aren't you? No, I found out you're leaving this year.
Yes.
That's terrible. No, I enjoy when I go down to city clerk. I always like to see Betty down there. I didn't realize you were old enough to go already, but I understand. I went after 37. Go enjoy yourself. But I beat you to be a grandparent by 1 month, remember? Mine was April the 1st, so I beat you. It's fun. You're going to enjoy being a grandparent. And going to miss you around here. And I have this for you. I don't know how much is in it, but, you know, the tradition always goes to the spouse. You lose out. So he gets no. He gets it. Which one? Well, somebody take it. Congratulations, Betty.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to thank the City Council for this. Carlos?
The city
You can
clerk
come up
would
and take
be
pictures from the
signaling-
side of the desk.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, come up here.
Yes, please
Get
come
the
up,
wide angle
council.
shot. We want to get everything.
There we are.
Just put it on video.
I would like to thank the City Council for this recognition, and to my husband Phil and son Carlos for being here tonight with me. I also want to thank my co-workers who stay late today for this council meeting. Your support means a lot to me too. My friend Joyce that is here too, all the way from Pasadena. I would like to say that I consider myself very fortunate to work for such a great city and for being able to come to work in such a beautiful environment, like our civic center each and every day. I have been a resident of Glendale since my parents moved with us here from Mexico over 39 years ago. I was a student at both Roosevelt Middle School and Hoover High School. Had my two sons at Glendale Adventist Hospital, and as I mentioned earlier, I have worked with the city since high school. This city is an important part of my life history. The city of Glendale is my city. I feel honored to serve here every day. This award means more to me than a recognition of clocking into work for 35 years. To me, it symbolizes my lifelong relationship, as well as that of my family's relationship to Glendale. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kasakian, you're on.
Mr. Mr. Mayor, and proclamations and recognitions continue at 3D as a proclamation designating September 21 through 27, 2008 as the 39th National Surgical Technologist Week.
Okay. Is Connie Bell here? There she is, coming forward.
Something I say.
I don't think it's anything you said.
It's okay,
They're going out to dinner. Celebrate.
That's okay.
Mr. Weaver, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, I'd like to, as soon as the crowd leaves. Good night, all. Have a great dinner.
Hey, folks, the council meeting continues, so.
And the proclamation reads, whereas surgical technologists are allied health professionals who, as members of the surgical team, ensure that each operative procedure is conducted under optimal conditions for safe patient care, and whereas surgical technologists are highly trained specialists who are responsible for maintaining sterile procedures in order to protect surgical patients from dangerous post-operative wound infections, and whereas surgeons depend on surgical technologists for their expert assistance in providing direct, safe surgical patient care in all the surgical specialties, and whereas the California State Assembly of the Association of Surgical Technologists and its members in the City of Glendale work tirelessly to promote quality patient care through education and professional practice standards, and by honoring National Surgical Technologist Week throughout the state of California, now therefore, John Draymond, Mayor of the City of Glendale, hereby proclaims the week of September 21st through 27, 2008 as National Surgical Technologist Week, and recognize the contribution of surgical technologists, the health and welfare of the community, and call upon all citizens to recognize and honor National Surgical Technologist Week. I was in there a lot of times.
Thank you, ma'am. He sings.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I should also call it. I sing you.
Mayor Draymond, members of the City Council, good evening. My name is Connie Bell. I am a certified surgical technologist and director of the Surgical Technology Program at Glendale Career College in the City of Glendale. The Joint Commission on Accreditation of Healthcare Organizations, JACO, defines the surgical technologist as an allied health professional who works closely with surgeons, anesthesia providers, registered nurses, and other healthcare providers, delivering patient care and assuming appropriate responsibilities before, during, and after surgery. Our surgical technology department has graduated 2,195 surgical technologists since 1990, and it is, by the way, the only program in the city of Glendale. Most of these graduates are working in the operating rooms of our local hospitals in Glendale and its vicinities. We work very closely at local, state, and national levels of the Association of Surgical Technologists and enjoy an excellent reputation and relationships throughout the communities we serve. On behalf of the college administration, my instructors, surgical technologists, practicing surgical technologists, and all the group of green people, they're my students, which are the future of the profession. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this honor, for recognizing this National Surgical Technology Week, and for acknowledging the profession of surgical technology and the service that we provide. I also like to recognize and thank our local hospitals, Glendale Adventist Medical Center, Glendale Memorial Hospital, Verdugo Hills Hospital, and our surgical centers, Brand Surgical Institute and Chevy Chase Surgery Center, for their continued support in allowing our students to rotate to their clinical rotations, providing real-life experience to our students and employment to our graduates. Our school, the program, and our hospitals work constantly in providing and promoting excellence in surgical patient care through surgical technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you. May I just inquire also if your husband was the soloist the other night at the vocal?
Not my husband.
Oh, I'm sorry. You just picked up someone who was photographing you and wearing a lab coat. I just assumed.
He's a singer.
But, sir, were you not the...
A rumor, Mr. Mayor.
Were you... I started a rumor. Let me end it now.
Don't worry, I
Were you the soloist the other night at the vocal concert, though?
Were you the solo?
At the Adventist Hospital?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. You're traveling in excellent company, you see. Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Bell. All right. Mr. Kasakian.
At 3E is a proclamation designating September 2008 as National Alcohol and Drug Addiction Recovery Month.
Thank you. And could ask Lenore Solis to come up and to introduce the people who are with her.
Well, you know, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Windsor Club here in Glendale, but it is the oldest rehabilitation Alcoholics Anonymous, Al-Anon facility in the city of Glendale. And so I've invited two of the board members, Mona Mitchell, who happens to also be a sacristan at our church Incarnation, and Bob Lemke, who some of you might know served our city as a commissioner. And so the proclamation will be hanging at the Windsor Club, and they're here to give us all more information about the organization and inception of the Windsor Club.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. The Windsor Club started out in 1952 in Glendale in a building for the disabled veterans on Glendale Avenue, and then moved to 109A South Central. When the Galleria was built, we moved to 225 North Maryland, and finally, after many times of being the rent raised and everything, we built our own building. In 1977, we built the Windsor Club at 123 West Windsor Road, and currently we have, for instance, Al-Anon family groups are the families of alcoholics and drug addicts, and the first Armenian Al-Anon meeting in the world was held in that building. And we utilize it every day, and approximately 200-300 people a day utilize the facility. And we have a good relationship with the Glendale Police Department when needed, and we appreciate it, and we're really proud to be a part of the city. Thank you.
And let me also take a moment to read the proclamation. Whereas treatment and long-term recovery from substance use disorders can offer a renewed outlook on life for those who are addicted and their family members, and whereas substance use disorders impact 22.6 million people aged 12 or older in the United States, or 9.2% of the population, which is more than the number of people living with coronary heart disease, cancer, or Alzheimer's disease combined. And whereas people who receive treatment for substance use disorders can lead more productive and fulfilling lives personally and professionally, and whereas studies have consistently found that individualized treatment is essential for people to be successful in their path of recovery, and whereas it is critical that we educate our community members that substance use disorders are serious health care issues, but by treating them like other chronic diseases, we can improve the quality of life for the entire community, and whereas to help achieve this goal, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy invite all residents of Glendale to participate in National Alcohol and Drug Addiction Recovery Month. Now, therefore, I, John Draymond, Mayor of the City of Glendale, hereby proclaim the month of September 2008 as National Alcohol and Drug Addiction Recovery Month. And I thank you for the work you do.
one more person that I want to acknowledge, Margaret. Come on up here. You know, Margaret, of course, was involved also at the Windsor Club, and I want her to say a couple of words about how this has impacted her life.
My name is Margaret Hammond, and my husband was a member of the club, as I was. And actually, when we started the club, we took bonds to build that club without any help from anybody. It was the members of the club that, put up the money for the bonds and so forth, including Mr. Lemke. Put up a large, his home, as a matter of fact, as guarantee for that building being built. It has saved so many lives. I was a member of the board for many years and worked with Marion Lemke as an Al-Anon, and it's a wonderful, wonderful program. How many people go there and are helped, and otherwise they'd be just nothing in this world if they hadn't gone to that program. It has helped so many of them to turn their lives around and become very solid citizens of our city and all over, I'm sure, other areas too. So it's a wonderful, wonderful program, and I encourage anybody that needs that to go there and get the help that they need, because it can really turn your life around. And I found that for a fact. So my brother, as a matter of fact, had 40 years in AA. 40 years. And he visited the Windsor Club when he would come down from Toronto, and thought it was one of the most wonderful places. He said, I just can't believe it. When we had it built, he said, it's one of a kind, really, in America at that time that we had that building built specifically for us. So I do have to say it's a wonderful place to go when you need it. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Mr. Kasakian.
At 3F is a proclamation designating October 5th through the 11th, 2008 as Fire Prevention Week.
Okay.
Well,
Is Tanya, oh, there she is. She's hiding behind Councilmember Yousefian.
yeah, come on, Tanya, don't hide. Mr. Mayor, here's the proclamation. It says, whereas home fires caused 80% of the civilian death and 76% of the injuries, and whereas heating equipment and smoking are the leading cause of the civilian home fire death, and whereas children under 5 and older adults face the highest risk of home fires, death by young adults face a higher risk of home fires injuries, and whereas in 2006 there were an estimate of 396,000 reported home structures fires, resulting in 2,580 civilian deaths and 12,500 civilian injuries and $6.8 billion in direct damage in the United States. And whereas while 3/4 of the Americans believe they have 10 minutes or less until a fire turns deadly, the time available is often less. And whereas regular fire drills in the home are essential for every household, whereas the Fire Prevention Week in 2008 theme, Prevent Home Fires, is an important reminder for all citizens of Glendale. Now, therefore, John Draymond, Mayor of the City of Glendale, proclaims the week of October 5th through 11th, 2008 as Fire Prevention Week, and call upon the residents of Glendale to remember that Fire Prevention Week of 2008 to caution to prevent home fires, and urge all citizens to follow the simple safety practices and exit strategies that can help prevent fires and injuries. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and Dave Woods, Fire Marshal, and everybody knows Tanya Gregorian, our Public Education Coordinator. Thank you for taking the time out today for the proclamation. If I could just, for a few well, probably less than a minute, talk about it a little bit. This year's National Fire Prevention Week is October 5th through 11th. The theme this year is Prevent Home Fires. The history of Fire Prevention Week, which I'd like to talk about just briefly, goes back to 1871 with the Great Chicago Fire, when Mrs. O'Leary's cow supposedly kicked over the lantern that burned down the city of Chicago. 250 people died that day and 100,000 people were left homeless. And in recognition of that, we started actually Fire Prevention Day in 1920, and in 1922 we started Fire Prevention Week. Interestingly enough, under President Nixon in 1971, a study was done on the fire problems in America, and the report was called America Burning. At that time, there were over 12,000 fire deaths annually in America. Fortunately, that's been reduced to 3,430 in 2007. Drastic reduction, but we still have a lot of work to do. The focus of this year's theme is to teach the public how to prevent the leading cause of these home fires. The 4 leading causes of home fires are cooking, heating, electrical, and smoking. The Glendale Fire Department would like to remind families to have an escape plan and practice it. Watch what you heat. Test your smoke alarm monthly. And as Councilman Weaver pointed out last year, the smoke detector should be replaced every 10 years. Actually, that was the first I had heard of it. I was educated that day myself. So, and then eliminate unsafe electrical. Another thing that Fire Prevention Week does is recognition of the fire service and for the work that they do. In 2007, 102 firefighters lost their lives in the line of duty. This year, the City of Glendale Fire Department has an awards luncheon, October 8th from 11:30 to 2:30. If you'd like tickets for this luncheon, they can be purchased at 818-550-5616. The public is invited. So, Tanya would like to speak just for a moment on the activities that we're doing for Fire Prevention Week. And if you'll notice, I hope she doesn't get mad at me. She's out of uniform, and it's because she's 13 weeks pregnant. So she's got a little baby on the way. So.
Wow. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I'm so red right now. Members of the City Council, city staff, and everybody here today. I'll give you a little bit of information about the events that we're going to be doing during Fire Prevention Week. We really like to promote fire prevention, fire safety, emergency preparedness all throughout the year, but particularly during Fire Prevention Week, there are a few events that I'd like to highlight. One of them is going to be on October the 7th here at City Hall for our city employees. We're going to be doing a fire extinguisher demonstration at Perkins Plaza downstairs during lunchtime between 11 and 1 o'clock for everybody to come out during their lunch break, take a look to see how you can use a fire extinguisher safely and properly. And we're also going to talk about some fire prevention tips, home fire safety tips, and things like that. On October 9th, a new thing that we're doing this year is that at the Glendale Galleria at the J.C. Penney Court, all throughout the day we're going to be there with our public education vehicle, the Sparky Mobile as we like to call it, and be presenting fire safety DVDs all throughout the day. We'll be there from 10 o'clock in the morning until 9 p.m. in the evening. Also promoting fire prevention messages and fire safety messages, brochures, handouts. I'll be there with hopefully a fire inspector as well. So if anybody has any questions about home fire safety or anything that has to do with that, we'll be there on October the 9th all day at the J.C. Penney Court in the Glendale Galleria Mall. All month long, we do school fire drills all over the city of Glendale, private and public schools. So that's something that we do every year, and that'll take place all month long. On October 12th, we're going to be at the Unity Fest as well. So if anybody wants to also see a fire extinguisher demonstration at Unity Fest, you can be there at on Brand Boulevard this year, which is the new location, which we're very excited about. But we'll be there as well doing a fire extinguisher demo at Unity Fest. And then also throughout the month, we're doing different fire extinguisher and fire safety presentations for Nestle, Verdugo Hills Hospital, different businesses all over Glendale, homeowners groups, and things like that. So it's going to be a busy month. We're looking forward to it. And one other thing that we're doing for the 4th grade classes within the city of Glendale is we're going to do 5 fire facts every day. So the teachers basically design their daily curriculum around a fire fact a day. And that's a new thing that we started 2 years ago as well. So I encourage anybody who has any questions about home fire safety, home fire prevention, contact the fire department this month. Contact us anytime, and we can always answer the questions for you. So thank you very much, and that's it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. City Clerk.
At 3G is a proclamation designating October 2008 as Cultural Diversity Month.
Have a group assembling at the podium. Councilmember Najarian, and Ms. Ayad, are you the designated speaker for the group?
I'm the designated.
All
Well,
right.
actually, the group will have a chance to introduce themselves to you, and
We can do that briefly.
Yeah, we'll make it short and sweet. My name is Suzette Ayed. I'm the chair for the Employee Human Relations Committee. I'm very pleased to be here tonight with some of the committee members to talk about what the committee does and what we're here for the city employees. I'd like just to cover a couple of things that we do promote for the city of Glendale. One is to promote and encourage a sense of community among employees, promote unity throughout mutual respect, promote understanding, sensitivity, and appreciation for all cultures, and also promote and foster some appreciation of similarities, individualities, and differences. If you would allow a couple of members of the committee just to go briefly to tell you about some of the activities and the things we have accomplished and done throughout last year, I'd like to introduce the co-chair, Rosie Akopian.
Mayor Draymond, councilman, staff, nice to see you tonight. Thank you for the opportunity. I just wanted to briefly let you know that as the purpose of our committee is to deal with our employee community and our city's community, the events we put out are always related to that outreach. So we hold bake sales to raise funds for a variety of things that we support. We also respond to things like Hurricane Katrina, and possibly we'll be holding a fundraiser soon for the recent national disaster that occurred. And we just spent throughout the year looking for opportunities and events to do just that. I don't want to take more time, so I'd like to introduce Balaji Sajobi to tell you very quickly about the monthly events that we hold.
Thank you, Rosie. Mr. Mayor.
Good to see you again.
Thank you. Good to see you too. One of the things they said about the purpose of the Employee Human Relations Committee, which we hold very dear, is fostering good relationship among the different cultures in the city. And for this purpose, we have this monthly program called the World Adventures. Every month, we present a different country so as to improve the knowledge that we get from the Discovery Channel and limited sources like that. We get people who are authentically from the country that we feature so that they share with us very accurate information about the different cultures and countries of the world. This year we've been to New Zealand, not really gone there, but we had people come to us to talk about New Zealand, Belize, Venezuela. I was lucky to be a part of presenting Colombia. We actually got people who own a restaurant in Burbank to come out and talk to us about this. And in a couple of days, on Thursday, we will have Indonesia presented. And it'll be great to have people stop by and enjoy the food, authentic food from the different cultures, and meet people who are really from the countries that we feature. That's a program that we hold very, very dear, the World Adventures that we present every month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Anna Vixen. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councilman. Another one of the events that the EHRC sponsors in that is the annual employee potluck. And this event is held to promote, again, unity and to celebrate diversity by having the employees bring in their favorite dishes, the homemade dishes in that, and it culminates in a world of flavors for all of us to enjoy. This year we'll also be having entertainment, as we usually do, so the employees can interact with each other, and we'll be having the Glendale Iron Chef contest, pumpkin carving, and individual and group costumes. And we are looking for judges. So I'm soliciting too. So thank you very much.
Almost done. If you give us an opportunity to have the committee introduce themselves individually, so I would appreciate it.
Good evening, mayors, members of the council. My name is Officer Rosanna with the Glendale Police Department, and I believe I'm one of the newest members to this committee, and I'm very glad to be part of it.
Tanya Gregorian from Fire, also on the committee. Thank you.
I'm Rita Buchanan, and I'm with the City Clerk's Office.
Hello, Nancy Park from the library.
I think everyone else there we've met except Councilmember Najarian, who has the actual proclamation.
Mr. Mayor, if you will indulge me, shall I go through the entire proclamation? Or give the abridged version?
Every word a pearl. No, let's opt for the abridged version.
Now therefore.
Yes, take it.
Now therefore.
Now therefore, I.
John Draymond, Mayor of the City of Glendale, does hereby proclaim October 2008 as Cultural Diversity Month, and thanks all residents for joining us in celebrating Glendale's cultural diversity and enjoying all community activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
By the way, I'll be more than happy to be your judge for your Iron Chef contest. No problem.
Right. Mr. Kasaki, in our last presentation.
At 3H is proclamation designating September 2008 as Life Insurance Awareness Month.
That is Mr. Weaver.
I shall read it before you speak, if I may.
Absolutely.
The proclamation reads, whereas nearly 50 million Americans say they lack the life insurance coverage needed to ensure a secure financial future for their loved ones, and whereas life insurance provides financial security for families in the event of a premature death by helping surviving family members meet immediate and long-term financial obligations and objectives, and whereas recent studies have found that when a premature death occurs, insufficient life insurance coverage results in 3/4 of surviving family members having to take measures such as working additional jobs or longer hours, borrowing money, withdrawing money from savings and investment accounts, in many cases moving to a smaller home. And whereas the goal of the Life Insurance Awareness Month is to make consumers more aware of their life insurance needs and encourage them to seek professional advice, now therefore, John Draymond, Mayor of the City of Glendale, hereby proclaims the month of September 2008 as Life Insurance Awareness Month. I just have one question for you. At my age, when don't I need life insurance anymore?
When don't you need life insurance?
I'm 69 now. Statistically, haven't got that much longer. So I don't need life insurance in my 70s and 80s as much, do I?
Very, very good question.
Yes.
You buy life insurance for several reasons. One of those reasons is if you don't want to leave loved ones behind with a financial problem. Another reason could be is to preserve your estate. If you have a sizable estate,
No.
it could be that.
I'm a city councilman.
Okay. Well, those folks who are lucky enough to have the estates might want to preserve them because it's eaten up by taxes upon death. Another reason that you may want to preserve your life insurance is something that's fairly new that's been considered, and that is that when you're done with it, you can actually sell that policy. So there are opportunities which are called life settlements, and you may be able to increase your retirement fund by actually selling that policy to professional individuals.
Oh, I'll talk to my wife. For the advice.
Absolutely.
All right, Mr. Weaver, that's all you get without making an appointment.
I know it's free. It's free.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, thank you so much for letting us bring this proclamation forward. Sometimes you find it difficult to talk about life insurance because it's about something none of us likes to talk about, and that's death. And we do see with National Fire Prevention folks who were here that folks do lose their life prematurely. Life insurance seems to be one of those things that's difficult to purchase, and what our association, which is the National Association of Life Insurance and Financial Advisors, tries to do is bring awareness to the public that purchasing insurance is fairly easy to do. Our association meets on a monthly basis in which we educate our individuals who belong to the association on how to work with individuals to bring forward things such as I just spoke about to Mr. Weaver. Our association, and I would like to bring some of our folks forward who belong to our association, has education ongoing for those folks with professional designations. So we ask that individuals not only consider purchasing life insurance for someone that they may love, but also to use a professional licensed individual, and hopefully those individuals belong to a professional organization like the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. Our association has a high code of ethics and moral standards that we hold our folks to. There are over 300 associations around the United States with over 70,000 members in our association. And if I could, I'd like to bring two gentlemen forward that are part of the local association. First of all, Ara Aronian. Ara is our national assemblyman. He coordinates with our national organization, our state organization, and our local organization. And Mr. Toby Wills, who is responsible for professional development for the members of our association. So again, I want to take this time to say thank you for this time to present the month of September for Life Insurance Awareness Month. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kasakian, can we jump out of order for a moment here?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor.
And jump to the portion of, as you know, ladies and gentlemen, oral communications at the end of the agendized items. But we do take a time at the beginning of our meeting for those who voluntarily limit their comments to 3 minutes in length for the purpose of public announcements. And we have just a couple of speakers here, and some of them are students. I'd like to get them on their way back home so they can do their homework and so on. So our first speaker is Andrew Reichman, or Reichman.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Andrew Reichman. I want to announce that the City Clerk's Office is hosting a rabies vaccination clinic on Thursday, October 9th, 2008, from 7 to 8:30 p.m. at 2 locations. For more information, call 818-548-4000. And then also, I have also came here today to talk about a very important issue to me. I live in Spar Heights, and it seems like I can't walk up my block anymore without seeing a missing cat poster, or even worse, a poor cat's remains. The reason for this, that the neighborhood is overrun with coyotes that hunt the area, preying on our pets. That's why I would like to encourage everyone to please make sure to get your cats, or even small dogs, into the house before dusk. It takes very little effort, but still, a lot of people don't think about it until it's too late and then your pets are gone. In conclusion, just please remember that if you lock the door, they can't let themselves in. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Just a few others that we have to get home to do their homework. The next would be John Sad. followed by Leon Mayer.
He's doing homework.
I know he's got a lot of homework to do.
What school do you go to?
School of Hard Knocks.
Oh, School of Hard Knocks.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm John Sadd on behalf of the Educational Foundation with Susan Hunt and Patty Scripter. And thank you first for reminding me I do have homework tonight. We're here on behalf of the Glendale Educational Foundation to announce our 4th annual State of the Schools breakfast, which will be held October 2nd at Edison Pacific School at the early hour of 7 o'clock in the morning. And we expect about 400 people that day. It's going to really be an informative and educational day. Dr. Escalante will be talking to the group about the state of our education and what's going on in our schools. We're also honored to have the State Superintendent of Schools, Jack O'Connell, with us, and Senator Jack Scott. And we're also going to have a special guest, and I'm not at liberty to tell you who that is, but those of you that are with us that day will get to meet our special guest. I'm also very happy to announce that this year's annual appeals chair is former Mayor Eileen Gibbons. And she's a woman of great energy and great enthusiasm for the schools, and we're very happy to have her on board with us. And again, next Thursday, October 2nd, 7 o'clock in the morning, Edison Pacific, the State of the Schools. We'd love to have you with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll see you then.
Good.
Bright and early.
7 in the morning.
Leon Mayer, followed by Doris Tweed.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor Draymond, members of the council. Before I say anything, I understand Artie Kasakian has this particular announcement that he wants to make. Okay. Well, there will be another announcement by the clerk about a nice event we're having on the 29th of September, and I'll talk about the other events. October 1st will be the lady from the Huntington Library. Her name is Sarah Hodson, and she's presenting a slide lecture concerning Jack London and his photography. And we're having, during the month of October at the library, other events involving Jack London. And they're done under the auspices of the National Endowment for the Arts. And we're going to have a dog sled demonstration. We're going to have a movie about Jack London, The Call of the Wild, starring Charlton Heston. And we're having some other events there at the library involving dogs. Now that is October 1st. And then on October 16th, we're having Gustavo Arellano talking about his book, Ask a Mexican. And this is done in connection with the One Book, One Glendale event that we're doing this year. And Mr. Arellano is famous in Southern California for his work with PBS, with Orange County Reporter, and radio. So that should be quite an event, October 16th. And we're going to top it off on October 28th with Ernest Borgnine being here in person at the library to talk about his autobiography. That'll be October 28th. So those are our events, and I'm overwhelmed and humbled by all the community affairs going on here in Glendale that I was witness to as I sat through them all. And we don't like to feel we're competing with any other groups. We just want to encourage people to come to the library, read, enlarge your imagination, your background, and that's why this big read is going on next month at the library in connection with the National Endowment for the Arts. That's basically it, and we also urge everybody to pay close attention to Artie's presentation a few minutes from now. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Doris Tweed. I guess followed by Artie Kasakian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, Mr. Starbird, and staff. I don't have homework, but I would like to catch up with the city clerk staff for having a little celebration for Betty. And maybe you can join us later. My name is Doris Tweed, and I'm here again on behalf of the Days of Verdugo Heritage Association inviting you to our annual Fiesta Cita this Friday, September 26th. We have extended our reservation deadline until tomorrow. It was yesterday. Some of you probably remember that the original Days of the Verdugos Association was formed many years ago to support the Glendale JCs in the Days of Verdugos parade. Around the year 2000, DOV turned some of its focus to converting the Verdugo adobe into a museum. After the parade was discontinued, the adobe became our sole focus. The name of the organization was changed from the Days of the Verdugos Association to the Days of the Verdugos Heritage Association. Since then, we have continued to preserve and maintain the Verdugo Adobe Museum, which is California Historic Landmark number 637, located at 2211 Bonita Drive in the Verdugo Woodlands. Funds raised by the Fiesta Cita will enable the DOV to provide educational tours, brochures, and historic items for the museum. As I mentioned, the event is this Friday, September 26th, from 6 to 9 p.m. at the Casa Adobe de San Rafael at 1330 Dorothy Drive. We have it at the Casa Adobe rather than the Verdugo Adobe because we don't really have the facilities for that type of an event. Police Chief Randy Adams and Fire Chief Harold Scoggins will be recognized at the event for their service to the community. A Mexican dinner will be served. I believe it's fajitas. And margaritas and other beverages will be available. There will be music, opportunity drawings, and a live auction. Tickets are $20 for adults and $10 for children 6 to 12. Children 5 and under are free. For reservations, you can call me at area code 818-248-7109. And we know there are several events this weekend, and it's hard to get to them all, but it is 6 to 9, and we'll get you home in bed by 10 o'clock. Thank you.
Whether you want to or...
Thank you, Doris. Thank you. Mr. Kasakian, you have something special.
I would rather make my comments at the end of staff comments, if you may. The only thing I would say, Mr. Mayor, is that I wanted to thank Andrew Ragman for the announcement that he made, also urging residents to keep their pets inside. I do want to remind everyone that we are hosting, the city clerk's office has an annual tradition of hosting a rabies clinic for individuals who would like to have discounted vaccinations for their pets. We also vaccinate cats. It's very exciting. We have it right here in the city garage. You see a menagerie of all the dogs and cats that are in Glendale, all shapes and sizes. We've had Great Danes, we've had teacup Chihuahuas, you name it. People bring them out. And just to remind folks about it, we have a guest that'll be sitting here alongside me, alongside your red wagon, actually, a little stuffed dog. And that'll be hopefully a reminder for folks to remember that October 9th, 2008, from 7 to 8:30 p.m. here at the city parking structure, and also at Fire Station 28 in North Glendale for our residents who can't make it down to here the lower extremities of the city. At New York and Community Avenue and La Crescenta, there will also be a clinic.
Okay, thank you.
What's the cost on that?
The cost is rabies vaccinations are $6, 6-in-1 DHL PP is $14, Bortadella vaccination is $11, and the cat vaccines are $14.
That's at a reduced price?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, and it's definitely worth getting it done.
Yes, I had one of those myself, especially the Bortadella, because I had such a terrible case of kennel cough recently. And anyway, Mr. City Clerk.
Should have given you the distemper.
You should have given me the distemper shot, yeah. Absolutely. You got me on that one. Let's return to our regularly scheduled items.
Mr. Mayor and Council, at 3K is appointment of Mr. Al H. Hoffman to the Arts and Culture Commission. This was a nomination made by Councilmember Yusefian.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Yusefian.
I'd like to put forward the nomination of Al Hoffman for Arts and Culture Commission. As you know, I don't know, I read the paper. This is the first time I had to deal with this for Arts and Culture Commission. Maybe a good idea, actually. It has increased its portfolio. In my opinion, part of the reason I chose Al is because we were going to talk about a strategic plan for arts and culture. Al has been on the strategic plan, he has been on the specific plan, he has been on the coordinating council, he has ability to put people together and come back with some kind of strategies. I know there were some people who kept saying, well, gee, he doesn't have any experience in arts. I'd like to remind people that we had very, very highly professional people from Disney, DreamWorks, Warner Brothers, and while they were there, the Arts and Commission did not go anywhere. So, in my opinion, at this juncture, you need someone who's a facilitator, you need someone who's able to bring people together to deal with the strategic plan. And after that plan is done, we will be back here discussing what the future of the Arts and Culture Commission is going to be, if there is going to be one, if there is not going to be one, and if it is, what shape it's going to take. So in my opinion, at this point, I'm nominating him. I'm assuming that this will be a working commission. He'll be on there, and eventually he'll come back, and it may completely be changed and become something else. By the way, he worked for NASA for a while, so just a little bit. JP.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Yusefian.
For discussion purposes, I would second that, and I do have some questions of the city attorney.
Okay. Well, we have a motion and a second. I have no speaker cards, so it's right back to you, Councilmember.
So, I guess my issue involves partly what I read in the newspaper today, and then partly following up on the city code, our ordinance, which has some pretty strict language regarding the membership in this particular commission. Other commissions have like requirements. TPC, for instance, you must be a transportation professional, a DRB, and a landscape architects for some of the other boards. And I did glance at it, and the language says it shall be, and it really goes through some very detailed requirements. I like Mr. Hoffman. I think he's a go-getter. He's not afraid to speak his mind. He's spoken his mind to me several times. We agree to disagree many times, but in terms of following that code, what discretion does council have where the compulsory language is written?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, as you know, the general rule is shall is mandatory and may is permissive. However, there are exceptions. And in the context of that section, and I was the draftsperson of this section, along with the legislative intent and the history involving the city council at the time that they drafted this, I think the intention was to try to ensure, not mandate, that someone actually had demonstrated experience in the arts, because that demonstrated experience in the arts can take many forms. It can take an interest in the arts, or it can take someone who has had a formal education at Juilliard or some other school which is recognized, provides that type of training or experience. The intent of the council was to try to have individuals on the commission that had some experience or some dedication to the arts. So your discretion, in answer directly to your question, is somewhat broad. There was never any discussion of precisely where that cutoff point was. Was it 3 years of education at a educational institution, or experience in creating art, or purchasing art, or evaluating art? And I'm only speaking of one type of art, but there's art can take many forms, and so there is some broad discretion.
Well, my next question to you is, what is art? Perhaps that is a rhetorical question, and I think it does cover a broad. People describe us as being BS artists up here, and
that's an art.
I mean,
it's an art to just be here.
So you're saying that when you drafted it, you understood the legislative intent to be somewhat broad.
Yes.
You said to ensure but not mandate.
Correct. How do you differentiate between to ensure and not mandate? Mandate is as you well know, it is something that is required, and there is no exception. It's got to be there. Ensuring is that at least you look at it, make a determination that somebody has the breadth of experience that you think will fit in to the duties, obligations, and the parameters of that commission.
And please remind me where we are, and Mr. Draymond, Mr. Mayor, perhaps you have a better understanding of the timeline. Where is this current commission going? We decided that we're going to restructure the entire format. What duties are left to these commissioners? We have another one following this. What's left for them to do between now and their reformation?
Well, given where I thought there might be a question, or hopefully not a controversy, but some questions about this particular nomination and the whole issue of what are required qualifications and so on, I thought about that question, actually. And the fact is that, I beg to differ with Councilmember Yusefian, his characterization of what is coming back is not what he described. It's what we voted on. And what we voted on is not to bring back a report about what the future of the Arts and Culture Commission will be. It is, in fact, a dissolving of the Arts and Culture Commission that we voted on, instead to transition to a task force that has the mandate from the council by the end of the year to come forward with a work program for the arts that will determine the structure and substance of a private nonprofit arts council for the city of Glendale, which will be partially city funded in exchange for a work program, similar to how we operate our BIDs, where they present a work program. We, in turn, provide city funds, some city funds to them, and they tell us how they're going to spend it, and they come before the council each year to present that and say, here's the programming we're going to present, and here is how that money has been allocated. Also, as part of that was the mandate that private nonprofit have grant writing capacity, and that all of the programming will be geared toward fundraising for the organization. And that they are mandated to specifically work to present programming that connects the needs of business with the arts to help promote business in the process. And this is to take place regionally, not outside of our city, but regionally throughout the geographic areas of our city. That was the specific motion. It was restated, and that is what is. So we're not working on a strategic plan for the arts. That's not what's coming back, nor the future of the commission. It is specifically a work program for the arts this new Arts Council will operate under, and they're to be working in conjunction with the city attorney's office and arts professionals in the city. And we felt that the current arts and culture commissioners would be part of that transition team.
Mayor?
Yes.
I think maybe we should have the city attorney looked at that tape. My understanding was this was to give direction to staff to basically write that legislation to come back to the council. If I'm not mistaken, because I specifically asked what has changed about Arts and Culture Commission, and the answer was there is no change because there is no legislation in front of us to vote for that change. And I remember that instinctively I asked that question.
You did ask, but it was in regard to a different question. It was after we had voted, and you said, so what does it mean about our Arts and Culture Commission? Should we still be appointing people to that commission? And then you asked what had changed about the existing commission, not about what we voted on. As a matter of fact, what I read as a motion, I wrote out very carefully. And if you go back to the tape, you'll see that what I just restated is exactly what I wrote. And that is what our motion was. And the reason why I went back and looked at it is because I assumed that this question would come up tonight. Mr. Weaver and then Mr. Howard.
And what Mr. Majority referred to, I'd like to read. Members shall be individuals with substantial professional expertise as an artist, designer, or arts administrator in the fields of the performing, visual, folk or literary arts, or architecture, or business community leaders with an acknowledged record of stewardship of the arts. Mr. Hoffman, who I know quite well, the only statement in his whole A report says, as a member of the Downtown Specific Plan, serving on it, I realized a great need to promote arts and culture activities in Glendale. That doesn't answer what's in the criteria of the Arts and Culture Commission that I voted to establish back in the 1990s. With all due respect, this is not a political vote on my part. It's a question of Mr. Hoffman's resume doesn't match up with this commission. Other commissions it might fit, but not on this particular commission, so I can't vote for this appointment.
Okay, let me go to Mr. Howard, who had his hand up.
I think my point was consistent with both the mayor's comment and Councilmember Yusefian's comment. We have not amended the code to change the fact that the commission exists and it still carries on its functions. What we have done is send us on a path which may result in ultimately that commission no longer being in existence. It does not preclude you from appointing individuals. It just creates the question of whether you want to continue to do so, given the potential, what I guess I should describe as the dubious future of the commission. But the legislation, correctly, has not changed. We have not amended it, nor have we repealed it.
Okay, I'd like to ask you a question, Mr. City Attorney. You drafted that language?
Yes, sir.
If you didn't mean the word shall, which you take very seriously, why did you use the word shall versus ensure or try to or see if we can or may? You chose that language for a reason.
In effect, again, as I point out, the general rule is that shall is mandatory. However, in the way the context is that it's written in this ordinance as well as some others, you look at it, it can be permissive in terms of giving you discretion. If it is too narrow, what the council will end up doing is essentially being locked into certain things that you yourselves don't want to be locked into. So that in that context, when I drafted it, shall was not mandatory, and essentially it's that area between permissive and mandatory, more directory, if you will.
No, I understand that's the same thing you said a while ago. What I'm asking you is, why did you then select the word shall?
I think it was the council wanted to make sure that when you had the opportunity to look at someone, that criteria was set out so that they knew and the council knew that would be the focus of the experience that you were looking for.
Okay, so the intent was not to say, we'll just try. The intent was to say, this is what we want. Is that what you're doing?
In fact, the way you phrase it, I think, is precisely the way I was looking at it, is that is what you want, but not mandated as locked in stone. If these people don't have these criteria, they don't qualify. Certainly, I think your point is well taken.
Mr. Najarian.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to introduce a competing motion, and that motion would be to continue this item till next week, where we have a full council, thereby eliminating any chance of a 2-2 stalemate.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Now, for housekeeping purposes, how do we do that? We have a motion on the floor, and we're going to offer
That is a substitute motion that can be continued, that has priority over the main motion.
All right. Before we vote, then, I'd like to weigh in on this. Mr. Hoffman and Councilmember Yusefian, who made the nomination, and to Councilmember Najarian, who has seconded it. This is difficult because I've known Mr. Hoffman for several years, and I've always appreciated and respected his views and his experience and his input on technical issues. And very often they are creative. And one that I found rather creative and helpful was an issue related to the Grandview property that he came here and suggested, and I think the city is looking at that. However, if I came before this council as an elected official and I suggested that we nominate the prima ballerina from the Ballet Russe to serve on the Planning Commission, both Mr. Hoffman, Mr. Yusefian, and my colleagues would want or suggest that I have my head examined, and rightly so. I want to just take a moment to read, since Mr. Weaver read the requirements or the prerequisites. I'd like to read some of Mr. Hoffman's resume because it is extensive. But I'm going to read the highlights of it. A senior systems engineer at Swales Aerospace. Subsystem engineer for the EOS Aqua spacecraft at TRW. Mission control team supervisor for the Galileo Jupiter Orbiter and Probe mission. Mission controller for the integration and test, launch, and flight operations for the TOPEX Poseidon Earth-orbiting oceanographic spacecraft at JPL. Spacecraft systems engineer on a classified TRW program. Subsystems manager on a proposal for a classified program at TRW. Spacecraft computer and data handling subsystem engineer at TRW. End-to-end information system engineer at JPL for future NASA planetary missions. Spacecraft onboard data systems lead engineer for JPL. That was related to the Viking and Voyager planetary missions. Facility and operations project engineer for planetary flight projects at JPL. Operations control engineer for the DSN ground stations, mission control center, and communication systems. Spacecraft hardware design, fabrication, test, and integration of electronic control units for missile guidance and control systems at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and more. What is missing from all of this are any credentials related to the arts, especially as it relates to the prerequisites and the clear desire of the council to have people who are experienced in the arts. Or, as it says, community, individuals within the community who have shown through their body of work over the years that they have a special interest and input in the arts through their specific work. Mr. Hoffman says, while serving on the downtown specific plan, I realized a great need to promote arts and culture activities in Glendale, and I know that he is sincere about that, and I know that he cares about our city. He always has, and he has always shown that, and I know that he cares about the arts in the city. However, I would support Mr. Hoffman for the GWP Commission. I would support Mr. Hoffman for the Traffic and Parking Commission, but not for Arts and Culture Commission. He has no appropriate background or training or expertise. I believe in space flight. With all my heart, I believe in space flight. But Al Hoffman would never hire me at JPL because I don't have the background for it. Mr. Hoffman, if I ask you to go to Kenneth Village as a part of this work that this commission will be doing, and determine for me whether it is an appropriate venue for a dance concert and whether you would recommend that it should be done 3/4 of proscenium, and would the throw be better used for ellipsoidals, Fresnels, or maybe several Inkies, and if I ask you about the stage floor, should we use, I don't know, risers or wagons, what would you tell me? If that group were considering programming at Adams Square Park for a paint-out, and they were going to have jazz music combo there in addition, would you, which community artist would you select as the best plein air artist in Glendale to recommend? Would it be Vince Takis or Frank Serrano, or would it maybe be Kendra Page? And also, if we're going to have a swing combo there or a jazz combo there, and it was decided by the group they wanted traditional jazz, would you suggest a swing band that plays standards or Dixieland? What I'm getting at here is that you're a rocket scientist, Mr. Hoffman. You are. And a good one, it sounds like, and I know you are, and you're respected. But you're a rocket scientist, and this is a transitional job that we're creating to create a work program for programming the arts and to create an arts council for Glendale, not for Venus. So I can't support you for this. But if you were coming before this council as a nomination from one of my colleagues or perhaps from me for a technical area in a New York second, I would nominate you and vote for you. But in this area, I can't. The arts are important, and one of the reasons, in fact, the reason that this Arts Commission did not succeed was because of the lack of seriousness and the lack of care, I believe, from this body over the years, and this group as well, and the lack of funding for programming. A minuscule amount of nearly $160,000 was spent for programming, the balance for staff. That doesn't demonstrate the kind of commitment, and I take it seriously, and for that reason, I can't do this, Mr. Hoffman, any more than you or Mr. Yusefian, my colleague up here, would consider me to do your job or work in your department, or for me, as I said, to send an opera singer to sit on the Planning Commission or the Design Review Board. So I can't support this, and it pains me to say that because I have known you, as you know, for several years, and I think very highly of you. Thank you.
On the floor.
We have a motion on the floor. I was just allowing some time if anyone else would. We have one speaker. Also, there's no agenda item, but the agenda item says Hoffman, and I assume they mean Al, so...
My only question before the speaker comes up is, one, are you sure you still want to be a candidate for this commission? And if so, I think we should give him some time to respond to some of our concerns, either today or next week, if, in fact, this motion to continue passes.
I do have one concern.
But Solis, no?
It's Lenore Solis, I'm sorry, yes. But before anybody speaks there, let me just get to this about continuing it, and that is the motion. My only concern is that we are talking about continuing it to next week, which is the 30th, which, if you recall the schedule, it is extremely long. And it sounds like we're going to have some debate on this. I just want to remind you all of that. So if we are picking a date, you may want to consider that.
Well, I would modify that motion with that point being raised to the next
What is that date?
Meeting date, if it's not
Spears, do you have a...
7th.
October 7th.
About fine. To October 7th?
I would amend my motion to make it 7th.
All right.
Agree.
I'm sorry, the 7th, yes, okay. Now, let me go to our speaker, Lenore Solis.
Lenore Solis, resident of Glendale. Wow, what a resume that Mr. Hoffman has. And, I think Mr. Hoffman is a truly genuine man, and I think it's really important to note, my son is on the Arts and Culture Commission, and he is a musician. He's a classical tenor and a drummer. And, he sang in the Oxy Master Chorale, and now he's singing in the Pasadena Master Chorale. And it's surprising when you meet this group of 100-plus people, how many of them are physicists, are attorneys, are scientists, speak multiple languages, are involved in sciences and the like. And I told my son, why are there so many scientists here? What's that all about? Is because we're here, near Caltech and JPL? And he said, no. He said, if you look up traditionally, a lot of musicians are also involved because of the part of the brain that you're using. You're accessing a part of the brain that, I guess the rest of us don't really use, because let's face it, when you're a musician, you're learning a whole other language. And I think, and we're all, members of that community, because we listen to music, we appreciate music. Imagine the world with no music and no color and no art. There's art everywhere. Architecturally, when we look at homes and buildings, and we listen to music, and we walk. Our seal is a work of art. There's so much that we have to appreciate. And I served on the Water and Power Commission. I wasn't an engineer. I wasn't a water specialist. I wasn't a technical person. I was a ratepayer. And thank God that Mr. Weaver and Gus Gomez, they realized that, we need to have somebody that represents the ratepayers there. And it took me a while to catch on to all the acronyms and all that stuff that you just said. I have no idea what you're talking about. But you know what? There is a learning curve, and you do learn. And I think it's great that somebody who doesn't, isn't a musician, because we've had a bunch of people there that are musicians, and maybe that's the problem. Maybe they're so focused on their work as artists, as musicians, doing their thing, that maybe what's lacking was the agenda, the strategic plan there within their group to move forward and to take some steps forward. So I'm hoping that maybe you'll be a little bit more open-minded and understand that all of us are artists in our own way. All of us, we get up and we speak. We're orators, and there's poetry in some of the words that we speak. You especially, dear Mayor. So I understand where you're coming from, especially because of your background. But you got to look at it the other side. What about those of us patrons that pay to see the shows and pay our money to go do a walking tour of gardens that also are representative of art? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Felias. I'd like to respond to that. You paint quite a picture, but it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. You're saying ignore the fact that there are people, ignore the fact that we have a section of our charter that says what we're supposed to be doing. Ignore those qualifications. Let me just restate it again. The other members, those who are not school board members or college board members of the commission, shall be individuals with substantial professional expertise as an artist, designer, or arts administrator in the fields of performing, visual, folk, or literary arts, architecture, or business community leaders with an acknowledged record of stewardship of the arts. Now do we add the words, or not? That's what you're saying. And you're talking about the importance of people who are patrons of the arts. I don't overlook that. I made my living in that business for a long time, so believe me, I don't overlook the issue of patrons of the arts. But we're not appointing patrons of the arts for patrons of the arts. We're talking about people who are not even going to be sitting on a arts and culture commission per se, but being a transition team to create a work program for programming of the arts. In other words, figuring out whether Adams Square is going to have a champagne paint-out or a, programming with a small p. Small fundraising items that will keep this group solvent, and you have to know about programming in the arts to do that, and that's the point. I don't think that's being closed-minded. I think what that is taking it seriously and trying to stick to a section of our charter who, by a strange stroke, suddenly our city attorney says, well, we didn't really mean what's written here, even though I drafted it. The real intention of the council at the time wasn't really this. It was, we shouldn't have used the word shall. Well, we said shall, but we don't mean shall. We mean may or try to or sort of kind of. So it's just too darn convenient that we suddenly reinterpret what the word shall means. Well, in most cases, it means you will. But if it doesn't seem to fit, then we'll just say, well, that wasn't the real interpretation that the council imparted to me back when they asked me to draft this, and they voted on it. So we have one more speaker, or another speaker, Mike Mohill.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilman. I think you ought to change the rules of the game. Because what you have going on right now, people are not happy. And you have a man by Mr. Hoffman who's willing to put his name on the wall to be accounted for. I'm an amateur musician. I'm a patron of the arts. And I chose not to be on this commission. I could have asked Mr. Yosefian, would you please put me on that? No, I don't want that commitment. This gentleman's willing to step forward. That's important to me because, artists don't necessarily make the best business people, as you know. And artists don't necessarily make the best politicians, as we also know, too. So maybe it's time to have a change in the mix-up with a different perspective. Artists don't think like a businessman. They just know I feel good. In fact, most artists will say, you know what, I hate soliciting for money. Let me play my piano, let me sing. So I think the fact that Mr. Hoffman is willing to step up to the plate and volunteer his time, hey, he doesn't even get paid for it, I don't believe, right?
No.
Right? Doesn't get paid, does he?
No.
Doesn't get paid, right?
That for sure.
That's for he makes less. He makes less money than you gentlemen up there. All right, and yet he's willing to give his free time for the city of Glendale. Mr. Hoffman, I thank you. We don't always agree, but on this issue we do.
I'd like to respond to that as well. And just to show you how right Mr. Mohill is, that's exactly what our charter says. It says either artists, designers, arts administrators in the field of performing arts, performing visual, folk, or literary arts, architecture, or business community leaders, but those who have an acknowledged record of stewardship of the arts. So it's saying we welcome business leaders, we welcome administrators, we welcome people in the field of architecture, literary arts, folk, visual arts, performing arts, etc. But they have to have an acknowledged background in the arts. It's not saying turn it over to just art for art's sake. So anyway, it does agree with you in that it wants a broader issue, but it does add the caveat of those people who are in the business world, but
absolutely, you're right. But if we had more people to choose from, we can dot the I and cross the T. But how many people are in the audience willing to volunteer their time here, Mr. Mayor?
I appreciate your comments, Mr. Mo.
Thank you.
Well, I would just say to those who want a new interpretation or start over, we have to start by changing the charter on that point.
Municipal Code.
Mr. Najarian.
Can I move the question or something?
Well, if you ask for it or someone. Mr.
I'd like to move
Yusefian.
the question.
Call the question.
Since I thought this would be a very non-controversial item and put on the agenda, let me make my comments. As all of you know, sitting in this audience or you see on TV land, I take this business very seriously. I do not appoint people who I do not feel they could do the job. Mr. Hoffman's not my friend. Mr. Hoffman has written many, many letters disagreeing with me, sometimes vehemently. Nevertheless, I looked at his resume. There is a resume of a person who knows how to organize a group. There's a resume of a person who has a vision. You tell me, what type of a person does it take to have an imagination to send a vehicle from here to Mars? That takes imagination. Because if you don't have the imagination, you won't even be able to fathom what does it take to get there. What is all the little details that you have to figure out and calculate and stage to get to that point? Arts and Culture Commission, while they're very lofty and they're artists, and my wife is one of those artists. She's a musician. She's also worked for the TV industry for over 25 years. And she's a union person. But you know what? All these artists need to have a business manager who doesn't know diddly squat about art, but he's fantastic about booking things, making sure that the train is on time, making sure that all the instruments are in the right place, making sure that everybody gets paid on time, making sure that the person who is giving the venue doesn't take the money and leave and your artist hasn't gotten paid. So those are all strategically planned. That's why I picked Mr. Hoffman, because of his ability to figure out what is it that is wavered commission who has been going around for the last 10 years, haven't been able to get a foothold to do. That's why I picked him. And I think I made a very good choice. And you know what? That last sentence that says Patriots of Art, did you buy any CDs? Did you listen to music? Do you go to plays? Do you have any painting hanging in your house? You know, it could be looked at and it could be interpreted any way you want to do. I was here in this dais, stood out there and pushed for this ordinance. I know what it is to be on this commission, and I know what this commission needs. And what I really take offense to is for our mayor to think I would be so stupid to put somebody like that on this commission without really considering all the facts or reading the ordinance or knowing what it says. But nevertheless, he's here today, and I'm going to stand behind him. You have to remember, we change all the rules. You pick your guy, and you're responsible for him. Does this council remember that? The audience remembers that. If those commissioners screw up, it's my hide. I'm willing to stand up for Mr. Hoffman. And if it's going to be my hide, take it out on my hide. But I think he's going to do a darn good job of organizing this group, coming up with a mission statement, which, by the way, I don't care what you do in JPL or NASA, that's the first thing they ask you. What is the mission statement? So you could move forward. People like Mr. Hoffman don't come along very often. Musicians, actors, dancers, we live in Hollywood. Dime a dozen. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Yusefian, I'm going to respond to you because I'm going to tell you I don't give a whit whether you're offended. I don't give a whit.
I know, you don't.
And the fact that you say we changed the rules. I'm going to just go to this. You totally, just now, misquoted, just in your little speech. You misquoted the section. It doesn't say anything about patron of the arts. It doesn't say that at all in here. It says business or community leaders with an acknowledged record of stewardship in the arts. Excuse me. The fact that you don't know what that word means doesn't change the requirements. And wait, let me finish. It says nothing in here, nor in the motion or the second, about a mission statement. It says a work program for the arts, for programming the arts. Nothing about a mission statement, nothing about patron buying CDs. It's talking about people other than artists in the business community, architecture, etc., who have an acknowledged record of stewardship in the arts. So.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move the question.
No, Mr.
Yusefian has a right.
Mr. Mayor.
I mean, I appreciate that, Mr. Weaver, but
Mr.
Yusefian has a right to respond.
From the time you have gotten elected to this council, you have found it to be your duty to literally belittle some of us, especially me. Maybe my accent is not that great. Maybe my English is not good either. But I will say, if you speak 4 languages, try that first. Please, that's not what it's all about. But Mr. Draymond, you have made it your task to pick every little word that I use and turn it around, editorialize every single one of my comments. And frankly, till now, I have just sat in here and shut the hell up because I figure, you know what, we got to get city business done. What the heck, let's move on. You know, and this is what another thing you do. You laugh very loudly.
You bet I do.
You make fun of people when they're speaking, or you heckle them, and then you ask them, oh, by the way, don't say anything when I'm speaking. Nevertheless, I made my comments, and I stand on my comments. You make your comments. That's fine. Please do not belittle me. I do not like to belittle you. I respect your position. Respect my position. You don't want Mr. Hoffman, it's very simple. You vote no, and that's the end of it. Do not destroy his integrity or anybody else's.
Mr. Yusefian, you put this nominee up.
Yes, I did, because I felt...
Excuse me, Mr. Yusefian, now I'm going to speak. I listened to you, now I'm going to speak. Okay? I don't belittle anybody up here, Mr. Yusefian. In fact, the greatest waste of time in the last year and a half that I've been on this council has been from the yammering, the unending yammering coming out of your mouth. And this council has sat through it and sat through it and sat through it. In fact, to the point that my colleague sitting next to me keeps a journal in the drawer of the cockamamie comments. Okay? So don't talk to me about belittling you related to your accent or your words. I disagree with you. I disagree with you. I disagree with your comments. I disagree with your point of view. And I take this seriously. The fact that you stand behind Mr. Hoffman, that's fine and dandy. I just am not keen on sitting up here, being handed a section from our charter, and being told these are the requirements for someone for a commission or board in our city, and then seeing us say, but it doesn't matter. Now, Mr. Mohill makes a point, and he says, maybe we should change it. Fine, let's change it. But we got to change it. We don't change it by ignoring it first and then changing it afterward. Let's stick to the issue. The issue is your nominee a nominee that is qualified to serve on this commission? You point out that he has other beneficial characteristics and other beneficial qualifications, and they are organizational and creative. I don't doubt that. In fact, my statement said that. It's just that those don't apply, in my view, to what our charter says we're supposed to be doing. And I come back to the point, as unemotionally as I can, that if I came before you and put forth a nomination for a classical cellist to sit on the planning commission with no background in planning, building, architecture, engineering, you would say this is not an appropriate nomination. In fact, you yourself have told me that the reason you would not accept the nomination or nominate the president of the Glendale Historical Society to sit on the Historic Preservation Commission at one time was because she wasn't an architect. And the commission only requires to have one architect, and they already had one. So what I'm saying is, I'm not belittling you for that. I'm pointing out the fact that you, in all other areas, have taken this very seriously and stuck to the criteria. Why now? Why the change now?
I think I'm sticking to the criteria. And that's not part of the charter, that is actually the municipal code.
Fine, municipal code.
So, I think we have a motion on the table, let's take a vote on that.
We have a second as well. Mr. Najarian.
Well, since I've been outed, I would like to admit that I have been keeping notes now and then, not too often, on some of the more colorful phrases. And I was going to incorporate them in a book, and I swear I was going to give you 30% of the royalties, Mr.
That's right. That's right.
I swear I was going to.
So that's art, right?
Literary art.
Oh, hey, what can I tell you? We're both artists now. That's what we do instead of doing the real business of the city. So, call for question.
That's already occurred.
Substitute motion.
On the substitute motion.
To continue it
if we would
October 7th.
October 7th.
So Mr. Quintero gets the full flavor of our discussion.
He can watch this tape.
All right.
Well, there's a tie.
All right. Mr. Kasakian.
Council members Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero, Weaver,
No.
Yusefian,
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes. Just a clarification, had we tied on this, it would have rolled over
carried
anyway.
over
Roll over to the
week.
next week's agenda, yes, sir.
So you didn't want it next week?
No, because we've got a very full agenda.
Got other things.
That's going to be the question after the
Or
tie.
should I say overly full agenda? Okay.
Hey, let's try the next one on for size.
Try the next one. Mr. Kasakian, if you please.
At 3L is reappointment of Ms. Joylene K. Wagner to the Arts and Culture Commission, and this was a nomination made by Mayor Draymond.
You want to try?
I would like to suggest that we carry this one over to the same date.
I'm willing to vote for this. One has nothing to do with the other one.
No, I know that, but we've we're going to be voting on nominees to the Arts and Culture Commission anyway on that date. We will have a full council.
Can you just
Second? Is there a motion?
Well, that would be...
I'll move that to continue this item to the 7th in conjunction with the, with item 3K, which has been continued.
I'm not hearing a second unless the mayor wants to pass the gavel.
I will second that.
I'll assume the gavel was passed, Councilmember Yusefian.
Najarian made the motion.
Okay, then Mr. Weaver, may I pass the gavel to you?
Thank you.
This meeting.
Just move forward with the motion. Any discussion on the motion?
Any discussion on the motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I don't understand why we're putting these together. I mean, they're two separate appointments.
Take the vote and we'll find out.
Okay.
Let's take a vote.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, okay. Council members Najarian.
Yes.
Quintero. Yusefian.
No.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Weaver.
No. Tie vote. Motion fails.
Okay.
Actually, it'll be
next
rolled
week.
over
no,
next
that's
week.
right.
I vote under the charter.
We'll roll over to the 30th. That makes sense.
Wait.
Excuse me.
I think he wants to say something.
Mr. Starber.
Probably the same thing Mr. Yusefian is. That still leaves room for a new motion.
Yes.
Yes, it does. You can move to reconsider.
So I will move to reconsider Joylene Wagner.
I'm
for
still
Arts-
the mayor pro tem?
Yes. Passing the gavel.
To Arts and Culture Commission.
Second?
There is a second, Mr. Yusefian.
This is the reconsideration.
Yes.
Roll call.
Council members Najarian.
Clarification, what are we voting on now?
Reconsideration of the previous motion to continue.
Reconsideration of the motion
To continue. That's correct.
Yes.
Quintero. Weaver. I'm sorry. No, Yusefian. That was my mistake. I'm trying to keep up with you guys. Yusefian. Okay. Mayor Draymond.
Aye.
What happened now with...
Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Weaver.
Aye.
Okay.
This is better than Burbank used to be.
And now, Mr. Mayor, members of council, you are now back to where you were prior to the motion to continue.
And since this is my appointment, I will put forward the nomination of Joylene K. Wagner. I will renominate her to continue on the Arts and Culture Commission. Her background, other than serving on currently as the president of the Glendale Board of Education, that is one of the requirements. That is one of our requirements of the language in the municipal code. Thank you for the correction on that, Mr. Yusefian. The municipal code, which requires that a representative from the Glendale Unified School District and also one from the college board. So she will satisfy that aspect, but also, and independent of that, Ms. Wagner is the Los Angeles Children's Chorus musicianship instructor, professional. She has with a professional designation in arts education from LA County Arts Commission. She's a longtime participant in the Glendale Unified School District Arts Committee's task force and part-time elementary school chorus director. So that is the background, and that is the motion.
Joyously second.
Joyously. No pun intended. Joylene Wagner. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Weaver, you're still up.
The mayor made the
I
motion.
didn't know that. Roll call, please.
Council members Najarian.
Yes.
Quintero. Yusefian.
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Weaver.
Joylessly, aye.
Okay. All right. I will come back to Mr. Yusefian.
I like to do this one. I like to put the name of Mia Lee on the audit committee, and she has had banking experience at least 3 pages long. She has had affiliation with Path Achieve, Glendale Education Foundation. She's been a treasurer, secretary, director, board of directors, mission, vision coordinator, and also she has gone to USC.
That's enough. Let's
for 2 years for architecture, not as an auditor. Nevertheless, she works for IndyMac Bank, and her main job is basically to deal with all the people who are trying to do fraudulent stuff, and she's also an auditor for the banks.
She works for IndyMac Bank?
Yeah.
I wonder if my wife knows her.
I don't know. She also happens to be a Korean American.
I'll have to check with my
Okay.
wife.
All right, thank you, Mr. Yusefian. That will be on the agenda. All right, next item, please.
Next item is City Council and staff comments.
Mr. Najarian.
Well, one of the things that makes Glendale a great city, besides having dynamic discussions on the city council, are the small efforts, the day-to-day efforts that our residents and our citizens do. And I'd just like to call one thing to everyone's attention that goes largely unnoticed, but makes a huge difference in its own special way. I would, in the mornings as I would be dropping my son off at Fremont Elementary School and past the senior rec center, the community center at Spar Heights, I would see on every other Tuesday a group of senior citizens, most of them ladies, out with bags and rubber gloves on, stooping down and picking up trash. And I saw it once or twice, and I asked my wife, "What's going on, Darlene?" Darlene, who's a little more bold than I am, went up and said, "What are you ladies doing?" And we discovered that every other Tuesday there's a group of senior citizens that marches from the Spar Heights Senior Center, the community center, all the way to either Montrose Park or Glorietta Park, and along the way they are just picking up trash, cigarette butts, newspapers, garbage, and they do this every other Tuesday. These aren't young people with excessive energy, but they want to make Glendale a better place, and this is how they do it. They are helped and supervised by Shirley Robertson from the Community Services Coordinator at the Parks Department. Fabiola Guzman also was out there. And I said I would announce the ladies' names. I was out there with them today and got a few strange looks as I went by Berolina's, picking up trash. I was in my suit. They were ready for real work. Kate Natil, Marguerite Ware, Connie Black, Nicolina Machero, Lois Leak, and Darlene Najarian is not a senior, but she was with the group. So, and there are many other people throughout the city that do little things that make Glendale better in many ways. We recognize many of them. Margaret, many of your community groups do many things, many of your members. But there are folks that aren't as acutely organized, but they just want to make Glendale better, and that's really what makes this a great city. So congratulations to all the ladies at the center, and thank you, George Chapchin, for, making that program and encouraging these seniors to be active and help the city. I have one other comment in regard to what Mr. Reichman, the young boy, Mr. Reichman mentioned. I live in that neighborhood. I've not only seen missing cats, but I've seen eviscerated deer on my front lawn and my neighbor's front lawn. It's a little bit scary. I mean, a deer certainly can run faster than I can jump higher than I can, or any of our children, probably has a better kick than any of us, but yet these animals are attacked by one or more coyotes. And my kids, after the last deer attack, asked me a question, and I'm not sure what the answer is. Dad, can we get out our BB gun and shoot at the coyotes if we ever see them in the backyard? So it's not a firearm, I don't believe. I don't want to, I'm giving that question to you. Can residents use a BB gun or other non-lethal type of weapon to disperse coyotes if they see them near their property?
Actually, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, discharging a BB gun is also a violation of our municipal code, but if just like any other threat to your health or safety, whether it be a firearm or a BB gun, if you are an imminent threat of either bodily injury or death, you can certainly repel.
But it needs to be immediate. It's not like, oh, I see a coyote over there, Dad, you know.
I think the police department would also frown on somebody
I told him. That's the answer I gave him, so.
pulling the trigger, whether it's a BB gun or a
I'm glad you
firearm.
cleared that up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Hart.
You're welcome, Mr. Najarian. Mr. Weaver.
Yes, this one I thought I'd have something to say about, since we've heard a lot about from Sergio and Linda Lalalian. I decided to go down to Glendale High School for one of the 3 games over the weekend. I went on Saturday for the game De La Salle versus Loyola High School. De La Salle is one of the top teams in the United States of America. Loyola is one of the top-ranked teams in Southern California. It was a great game. Loyola unfortunately lost. I wanted to observe what was happening on the field and off the field. There were 5 Glendale police officers inside the stadium. There were cars, at least 2 patrol cars that I saw circulating outside the stadium. There was absolutely no trash on the ground outside. It was, as far as I can tell, it was fairly quiet out on the street. The crowd dispersed quietly after the game. I saw nothing offensive, either in noise or whatever, in that stadium. The game itself, I enjoyed watching this junior in high school, 6'4", 233 pounds, junior in high school, run over De La Salle for 3 touchdowns. He's being recruited by Notre Dame, UCLA, and USC. Therefore, Joe Montana was there for Notre Dame, sitting up in the stands. Rick Neuheisel was recruiting for UCLA, and he was up in the stands. And Pete Carroll, recruiting for USC, was down on the sideline. So I was trying to find him. I never saw him. I just was told they were all there. This kid's only a junior in high school, but it was an exciting game, probably one of the largest crowds of the year, from what I was told. And they behaved very well. In fact, today we got an email from up north to the school district saying, Chris, thank you for your warm hospitality and smooth running of your game management efficiency on Saturday evening at Glendale High School. Your community welcomed us with open arms, and we appreciated the experience. It's one of the rare times that a team from Northern California has come down here. They liked what they saw. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver.
Who won, Mr. Weaver?
What?
Who won the football game?
I said Loyola lost in the last minutes a field goal block, and they took it back, finally scored, but it was an exciting game. I enjoyed it very much.
Mr. Yusefian.
A couple of comments back to the city. Since Mr. Hagani is not here and you're taking his place, if the public remembers and you remember, a while back we went back and we changed the zoning on East Glen Oaks Boulevard. 2 things has happened since then. Some of us got emails as the city tried to change the handicap ramp on one part of Glen Oaks, and everybody was under assumption that we're taking their property, we're cutting down their tree, because they didn't know that belonged to the city. There's another individual who is literally covering almost every inch of their property with pavers, under assumption that the property from the curb belongs to them, but in reality, when you take the 15 foot away, there will be barely anything left on landscaping, so they won't even meet their 40% landscaping. I would like to request that the city send a letter to the people on that street, letting them know what the actual property line is for them, so they know they don't own all of it, because some of them are building retaining walls on that property and encroaching into city property, number one. Number two, there have been several individuals who have heard about the downzoning or a change of zone on Glen Oaks, and they live on is that Hollister? What is
Parallel to Glen Oaks?
Yeah.
Hollister.
Hollister. They live on Hollister, actually. They abut the houses that are on Glen Oaks itself. And they would like also to have the same type of zoning apply to them. So I would like to know what it takes to start that process, so they would know, because they're also on flat land, they're also going down, and currently they're zone R1R, which allows them to be 35 feet tall. And so they would like that same regulation to make sure people don't come forward more than they do. So that takes care of the planning item. Mr. Starbird, it looks like the state finally has come back, and we have a budget. Is that correct?
I understand the governor has signed the budget plan proposed by the legislature.
Okay. As we passed our regular budget for City of Glendale, we talked about possibility of coming back after the state passes their budget, so we know what the implications are to us as far as the budget's concerned. And I was told we will get a chart that basically told us where we're going to be as far as our general fund budget, because we do a chart that says your 5-year, your 10-year projection. And I was told at the time that there was not enough time, and we will do this in a later date. I think it's been almost 3 months, so I'm hoping that do you know when we will be able to kind of deal with that, so we know exactly what we're dealing with now that the state has passed their budget and stolen a whole bunch of money from us?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Yusefian, the state's budget, as I understand it, and we're still waiting for more details, doesn't really impact our general fund revenues to a great extent.
But
there may be some slight reductions in COPS funding and library funding. There may be some minor items, minor in the scope of the whole budget, that'll be impacted. The significant impact is on our redevelopment funds, and that can be a loss as great as $2.5 to $3 million based on what we know today about the takeaway. There still remains, though, some trader bills for budget cleanup, which could still have some impact on budget, but so far the general fund has remained unscathed for the most part.
So when do you anticipate coming back and giving us that chart? And
well, the chart with the long-range projections isn't something we've been working on as actively as just getting the budget put together and finalized, as well as following the state's activities and the impact on redevelopment. Of more importance is the capital improvement program, because that's what the state's impact to redevelopment is really going to have an effect on our bond sizing. So for now, that's really what we've been focusing on, as opposed to trying to put a 5- and 10-year projection for the general fund together. I think that topic will probably come up as we round the corner and have our December revenue estimates in, and begin to do projections for the next year's budget and beyond, depending on where we see the economy going, which it doesn't seem to be getting any better, only worse.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yusefian. All right, are there any other staff comments? Mr. Kasakian.
Yes, well, just to go back to really quickly to the coyote issue, I do want to inform folks that, first of all, don't leave any food out. If you have food out, that'll attract them. Make sure that all your trash cans are closed. And according to the Los Angeles County Agricultural Commissioner, if you do continue to have persistent coyote problems, have them appearing on your house. I've had some coyotes greet me at my front doorstep when I've returned late in the evening. Do not try to do anything directly, whether it's with a BB gun or anything else. Go somewhere safe and then call 626-575-5462. That number was provided by the LA County Agricultural Commissioner. It's for animal control. Again, 626-575-5462. And that's what I want to say about that. The event I do want to actually announce, well, first, I had the opportunity to participate in the torch run for the environment this weekend, as I know you did, Mayor Draymond. And I want to congratulate everyone who helped organize that at Cerritos Park. It was a wonderful event. Many of our departments, including Public Works, Water and Power, Neighborhood Services, all turned out and had booths, along with a number of community organizations. and it was really encouraging to see people from different walks of life, of different ethnicities and backgrounds, socioeconomic status coming together for the common good of ensuring the preservation of our environment in Glendale. We can disagree on a number of issues here on the dais in the council chambers, within or without the walls of City Hall, but unless we have a planet upon which to have these arguments, our arguments are pointless. So the preservation of the environment, it's not a partisan issue, it's not a political issue, it's a human race issue, and it's an issue of ensuring that we return this planet to the children from whom we borrowed it. The event I do want to announce, though, and Mr. Leon Mayer alluded to, is sponsored by the Friends of the Glendale Public Library, and we have an opportunity to come in here at the Glendale Police Community Room next Monday. Acclaimed popular historian Giles Milton talk about his most recent book, Paradise Lost, Smyrna, 1922. For those of you who are not very familiar with where Smyrna is, it's on the Aegean Sea. It's the Levantine capital of the Mediterranean, and it was home to tens of thousands of Greeks, Armenians, Jews, and others in the Ottoman Empire. In the closing days of the First World War and the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk and his Turkish nationalist forces marched into Smyrna and burned it to the ground and either massacred or expelled its entire population. There were many stories of heroism, including that of Asa Jennings, a YMCA administrator who was in the Near East at the time in the Ottoman Empire, a man of not great stature. He only stood at 5 foot, but he did the work of giants by saving tens of thousands of refugees from the burning embers of the city by having ships ferry them across to safety to Greece. The reason this is of particular importance to me is because my grandmother, Mara Antonian, was a survivor of this massacre in Smyrna in 1922, and it's where the story of my family's immigration to the United States eventually begins. It's an often forgotten chapter in world history, but one that we should not forget to realize what human beings, what sort of horrors we can inflict upon one another. So Giles Milton will be in Glendale on Monday, September 29th, 2008 from 6 to 8 p.m. in the Glendale Police Community Room. A number of organizations will be there, as well as from the Armenian and Hellenic or Greek communities. And it's open to everyone. It will be in English. It is a free event, and there will be light refreshments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kasakian. All right. Are there any other staff comments? No. All right. Next item, please.
Next item is consent items. The following are routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before motion is proposed.
All right. Thank you. We have a couple of cards. One is to address consent, if I'm understanding the note correctly, consent items A through G as a whole. And that's Barry Allen. Followed, Barry Allen. I also have a request to pull item 5F, like Frank. So, but we won't be voting or entertaining a motion until we hear from the speaker. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, staff, and of course the public. I'm Barry Allen. For those of us who don't live in a vacuum, I think we have to be very, very aware that our economic conditions in this country are waning. As one of an economist, columnist, Paul Krugman, said, we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. That being said, tonight you're going to approve roughly $3 million of expenditures on the consent calendar. And the reason that I'm speaking to all of them, it's not necessary to speak to each one. I think the city needs to take this opportunity and renegotiate every single contract that's out there. People are willing to wheel and deal, and I think the city needs to take a serious look at it and bring each of those people back, each of the contractors back to the drawing board and get some savings on the contracts that you're going to agree to. Thank you, Barry Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move the consent calendar except for F.
Except for 5F, okay. Is there a second? We don't. All right, we have a second. Mr. Kasaki.
Council members Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero, Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian,
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes. Mr. City Clerk, could we hear the item at 5F?
5F is Director of Public Works regarding I-5 Western Avenue Access Program, demolition of buildings and structures to clear site for the widening of Flower Street, spec number 3216R, and Flower Street improvements, spec number 3159. At F1 is motion awarding contract to Interior Demolition Inc., spec number 3216R, in the amount of $459,977, with a reserve for contingencies in the amount of $92,000, and rejecting all other bids. At F2 is a motion awarding contract to Sully Miller Contracting Company, spec number 3159, in the amount of $1,994,517.50, and rejecting all other bids. At F3 is a motion authorizing city manager to enter into a professional services agreement with DMJM Harris, Inc. for an amount not to exceed $42,000. And at F4 is a motion authorizing city manager to enter into a professional services agreement with Epic Land Solutions for an amount not to exceed $63,000.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kasaki. All right, we have one speaker card. That is Al Hoffman for 5F. Mr. Hoffman, there were some notes on the back of your card, and I don't know if you needed those.
I didn't. I had it in my thing. I probably should keep it. If you don't need it, I'll fill out another one. Or maybe it's just impertinent.
Just return it out.
Anyhow, okay, thank you. Mayor Draymond, council members, and staff, I was curious about the demolition of the buildings. Who owns these buildings now? Are they the city? I take it's from Griffith Manor Park over to Western, or those buildings, those big buildings that are all along there. Is that what we're talking about?
Primarily, the buildings are from Western to
Yeah, they're tearing the
Roberta.
whole buildings down? The whole building?
Six buildings will
Well, several years ago, when we were debating about an animal shelter in Glendale, I had recommended that I didn't know who owned these buildings, and I recommended one of them, particularly the one adjacent to Griffith Manor Park, would be an ideal facility for an animal shelter. At the time, I proposed that we get with Disney Corporation. I thought they owned it. I wasn't sure who owned it, but not because of the ownership, but if there was a animal shelter there, it would be a great volunteer source for the Disney people that work there. This is a really important thing that happens. You have to have volunteers to help out taking care of animals. Also in the location is the rancho area down there. We have horses everywhere. We could have a fantastic facility for horses and everything. There would be room for doctors' offices there. Now, this could be a premier animal shelter. We wouldn't have to rely on Pasadena anymore. They've been doing a great job, but it's still, I think Glendale deserves its own. And I didn't know what part of this building could be saved to think about doing something like that. I believe the Equestrian Center would be approachable in doing that. I know a person that works there, and they don't have any facilities for injured horses or anything. And the whole area around there, that would be a real boon. And possibly Burbank. Their animal shelter isn't in the greatest location right off of the Costco road there, and maybe they'd want to do a joint venture in an animal shelter in that location. And I didn't know if any part of that building could be salvaged to do something like that. I think it'd be a real boon for Glendale and for all the people that have animals and want to adopt animals, and particularly all the horse owners. So it's just something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Mr. City Attorney, our current contract with Pasadena Humane Society is what term?
It's a significant number of years. Artie's giving me a hand stable about 9 years, but it's a long-term contract.
Yeah, it's in the neighborhood of 15 years.
It does let us terminate it after a certain set period of time. I think it's after 5 years, but I have to check to confirm. But we could terminate it after about, I think, 1/3 of the contract period. Just have to confirm.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Yusefian.
So, sir, could you let us know where the funding came for this project?
This, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Yusefian, this is state-funded, the STIP program. This is no match to the city, so this is all money through the state for our portion of what will be improvements to the ramp, the off-ramps, on-ramps to the I-5 at that location.
Okay, and
From the MTA has some.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Najarian, my fault. Yes. We also had a grant from the MTA that's included in there of about $2.2 million, yes.
so this is not any of City of Glendale's actual money. This is money that we got from the state in order to build the on and off ramp off of 5. And do we need all these properties for the on and off ramp?
Yes, we do. Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Yusefian, you may recall, our obligation under this is the widening of Flower Street, which is required by the Federal Highway Administration. Caltrans is actually going to do the widening. We looked long and hard. We wouldn't have gone after the properties unless we absolutely needed them. And the widening of the street is all going to take place on that northeast. The layout's a little different there, that northeast side. So we will be into those buildings to do this work.
I know the answer to the questions. The reason I ask is because most of these items were discussed in closed session mostly, so we had a lot more details in closed session than the public did, so that's one of the reasons I asked the question, so the public knows where the money comes from, what is the reason for it, and why we're doing this. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I would move 5F.
I'll second it with one comment. When the 4 on and off ramps existing now at Western are removed and replaced, there will be 2 large parcels of land, both owned by the city, I believe, that would be adequate for a animal shelter. That's years off. You have to get it built first. I assume all the land there, part of it probably belongs to Caltrans, but we can get an easement or whatever. There's 2 large parcels, bigger than the existing buildings, where you could put an animal shelter. So I second it.
All right, thank you. Is there any other comment or debate? There is not. So, Mr. Kasakian, if you would, please.
Councilmember Najarian.
Yes.
Quintero. Weaver.
Aye.
Yusefian.
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes. The next item, please.
Next item would be oral communication.
Thank you. We have a number of speakers. Wait. I see. Well, we already made the speech, so we'll just remind everyone that we have one more item, actually 2 other items before we get into oral communications. Mr. Kasakian.
At 7, under adoption of ordinances, at 7A is ordinance amending Chapter 8.58 of the Glendale Municipal Code 1995 relating to construction and demolition debris diversion program. This was offered on 9/16/08 by Councilmember Weaver.
Mayor, move 7A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I have no speaker cards. Are there any other comments? No. Mr. Kasakian.
Councilmembers Najarian.
Yes.
Quintero. Weaver.
Aye.
Yusefian.
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes. Can we hear the item at 8 and 8A?
At 8A, under action items, is General Manager of Glendale Water and Power regarding status of Glendale Water and Power Electric Smart Metering Plan in accordance with the Council July 10, 2007, directing to develop a long-term plan for transitioning GWP to smart meter technologies. At 8A1 is a motion to note and file the report.
All right. Could I ask, so Mr. Basson is here?
Mr. Basson and Craig Cunin, who administers our public benefit charge program.
If you could just give us a brief, very brief, as in 3 minutes or less, reminder for the public looking in that has not seen our packet and was not with us on the
Well, Mr. Mayor, council members, my name is Craig Keenan. I'm the PBC Marketing Manager for Glendale Water and Power. We've been before council 3 times in the past year on this receive direction. During the last couple months, we've been working with KEMA to put together a technology plan and a business case. That technology plan looked at 3 different technological options. It looked at our current operations, cost savings, and like that we could get from moving to smart metering. In a nutshell, that analysis pointed to 2 different technologies: the point-to-point, which is a cellular type. You put up a tower and it speaks to the meters. The other is an RF mesh technology, where the meters bounce the data back to the utility and we can talk back and forth. Basically, the analysis produced an internal rate of return of 9.35% and a net present value of $7.3 million for the point-to-point, and a net internal rate of return of 8.08% and a net present value of $5.5 million for the RF mesh. The point-to-point, the system cost, and this is a very conservative number, we'll get better numbers through an RFP, was $24 million for both electric and water, and it was slightly higher for the RF mesh of about $25.4 million. The next steps in the project are to develop an RFP so we can get better pricing, develop a detailed implementation and test plan, evaluate the RFP responses, and then come back to you, show you our results, and get direction on how to go forward.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that. I have no cards on this, so Mr. Weaver.
Move 8A1.
Second.
Mr. Najarian.
Mr. Kunin.
Mr. Kunin.
Well, let me just understand your internal rate of returns.
Yes.
So there's one of the technologies is $24 million, the other is $25 million.
Right.
And you're estimating that through the use of these smart meters, the electrical usage by the individual users will go down because they'll be able to monitor the rates, the different rates in effect, how much they're using instantaneously. And so how does the rate of return factor into that? I'm not sure I understand what that refers to.
When we did the internal rate of return, we took our weighted average cost of capital. The only thing we have to go by is the bonds we've issued recently. And our interest rate on that, I think, was 4.69%. So that's the factor we discounted over 15 years, the stream of benefits compared to the cost. And that's where we got the net present value and the internal rate of return. Does that answer?
Not really.
If you're looking at what we're going to save in terms of cost, the majority of the costs are labor savings. We have certain individuals who are reading meters now and doing field studies and things like that. We will retrain those people and find different positions.
So we're going to experience and recognize some organizational savings,
exactly,
as well as the individual consumer recognizing rate savings. Okay, I understand how that would then factor out. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We have a motion and a second. There's no other discussion.
Council members Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero? Weaver?
Aye.
Yusefian?
Aye.
Mayor Drayman?
Yes. All right. Next item, please.
We return to oral communications, the 5-minute portion.
All right. Our first speaker is Abraham Awazian.
Good evening. Finally, good news.
Nice to see you again.
Council member, staff. Yoga to Life is inviting you and your guests for a special grand opening event on Thursday, September 25th, starting at 5:30 p.m. We are going to have a community gathering with all our friends and neighbors to celebrate life and health. Events will include food and drinks, special introduction to our new studio, and instructors will be available to discuss any questions you have regarding yoga and how to improve your overall well-being. Please come and enjoy the fun food, drinks, and celebration of a special place we created for you and your family here in Glendale at 3335 North Grand Boulevard. I am personally looking forward to seeing you all. And if need be, instruct you in yoga. Thank you.
Mr. Awazian, and then for the record, could you state your name?
Abraham Awazian, President of Yoga to Life.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Robert Phipps, followed by Dottie Yelsik.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Draymond, members of the council, and staff. I'm Robert Phipps, a former smoker and a survivor of 2 bouts of smoke-caused cancer. I live in Burbank, but I've got a big stake in Glendale. In the early 50s, my friend and I used to take the red car down the center of Brand Boulevard to go to the movies at the Alex Theater. Over the past 55 years, I've spent many thousands of dollars at Glendale's shops, stores, mall, auto dealers, theaters, restaurants, doctors' offices, hospital. I've worked in Glendale. My wife has worked at Disney Imagineering for over 20 years. I got an AA degree at Glendale College, and I buried my mother at Glendale's Forest Lawn Cemetery. Glendale is a beautiful city. It's a great city, and I've always had a deep fondness for it. But lately I've been worried about it. I've been worried that it's in danger of losing its pride. Cities all over California are passing strong outdoor smoking regulations. Some 87% of Californians adults don't smoke. And when you factor in the children, it's about 90% of the residents of California that don't smoke. But from what I've read and heard, Glendale's rate of smoking is higher. In fact, it's possible that Glendale has the highest rate of smoking of all the cities in the state. And I'm sure the majority of Glendale residents would not be proud of that and wouldn't want to imagine their border signs reading, "Welcome to Glendale, smoking capital of the world," or of California, rather. A major purpose of lawmakers and laws is to protect the majority of people from harm by the minority. That's why we have speed laws and drunk driving laws. That's why we have laws prohibiting people from carrying guns in the city. That's why in public places dog owners must keep their dogs on a leash. There are innumerable examples of laws that are on the books to protect the majority of people from the minority, from irritation, annoyance, and harm from the minority. And that's why people all over the state, all over the world, in fact, are demanding that now their lawmakers protect them from secondhand smoke, both indoors and outdoors. They no longer want the annoyance, irritation, and disease from the smoke. To protect the great majority of Glendale's adults and all of its children, the city needs strong laws to prevent people from smoking in public places, because smokers won't refrain on their own. And businesses have no rational voice in the matter. This is about quality of life and health versus indiscriminate indulgence of addiction. It's not about economics. Unless you count all the extra doctor's bills and hospital bills the non-smokers must pay for exposure to secondhand smoke. First of all, business owners who demand that non-smokers continue to be exposed to secondhand smoke are operating out of selfishness and groundless knee-jerk fear. If they had researched Calabasas, Santa Monica, Burbank, Beverly Hills, and the Sherman Oaks Galleria, as I have, they would have learned that outdoor smoking bans don't reduce business and often improve it. My wife and I, for example, no longer go out to dinner in Glendale because we can now eat out in Burbank without enduring the smoke, and we're not alone. But even if the business owners were right, that's no reason to abide by their demands. Business owners don't belong in this debate any more than restaurant owners can decide the quality of food they serve or the cleanliness standards of their restaurants, even though that would let them keep more of their money. Next week, please join this great 21st century health movement and do the most important and beneficial thing you could ever do for the people, reputation, and yes, businesses of your city. Please pass the strongest possible smoking ban for all areas of Glendale, indoors and outdoors, where tobacco smoke will otherwise come in contact with unwilling people. Thank you.
Thank you. Dottie Yelsik, followed by Mike Mohill.
Thank you, Dottie Yelsik, resident of Glendale. Thank you, Mayor John Draymond and Council Member Bob Yosefian, for the emotional experience that I just had, because believe me, it helped me de-escalate some of the emotion from the drama that I felt in Verdugo Park this past Sunday at 7 a.m. trying to get my point across. What happened is there was an event in the park. Our running group was meeting at 7 a.m. We were about to leave the park about 7:15, and we were approached by a gentleman who was in plain clothes. He was wearing a black jacket that had no identification who he was. He had the back of his shirt tucked around a gun, so he was in a plain clothes, he was armed, and he was telling our group of about 15 people that we had to have our cars removed from the lower parking level because it was going to be closed and locked at 10:30, and we would not be able to get those cars out of there until 6 p.m. at night. And I questioned him. I said, "Why are you telling us this?" And he said that he was working on behalf of the City of Glendale Police Department. And so I questioned, I said, "Well, what is your name?" And he said, "Why do you want to know?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to know who I'm talking to." And he said, "That's irrelevant." And I said, "Well, who are you working for? Are you a Glendale police officer?" And he said, "I'm working in support of the Glendale police." So I had to leave the park to go home to call the non-emergency Glendale Police Department number because I couldn't get through on the payphone because the operator told me I had to call directory assistance, and I didn't have that number, and I couldn't get through a directory assistance. And there was no point in using my cell phone because I would go through the same thing. To make a long story short, this gentleman said if we did not have our cars out of there, that we were locked in there. So fortunately, 2 officers responded to my non-emergency phone call, and also Sergeant Thomas Lorenz showed up, and he said that the cars were asked to be removed because that was for pedestrian safety when the park was full. Okay, to make a long story short, I moved my car out of the park, as did everyone else, and it was more of a courtesy and to just see where this was going because I did not believe that this person had the authority to ask us to move our vehicles from an area that was not posted as no parking. I stayed in the park across the street and at the main entrance of Glendale Park from 10:30 in the morning until 1:15 in the afternoon. That gate was never shut. It was never locked. Now, I don't know, maybe Sergeant Lorenz had second thoughts about shutting it and locking it. I don't know. But there is no reason why we should have been asked by someone who was not in uniform, who was armed, to move our vehicles in a non-posted area. Now, my question to the City Council is who and what? Who hired this individual? He turned out to be, he was a private security guard. And by what authority did he have to ask us to leave the area in a non-posted, no restricted parking area?
Okay, thank you, ma'am. We typically answer the questions at the end of oral communications, but if to the extent that this is a staff item, let me see if anybody has an answer. I suspect we're going to have to look into it. Mr. Starbird.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I only have an update from Sergeant Lorenz, and I believe he spoke with Ms. Yelsick and explained to her that the security person worked for the group that was holding the event in the park. We can't answer for how he described his role, but he didn't work for us. He works for the event. Sergeant Lorenz indicated to her, however, that they could certainly be in the park, that the security person had misspoke or there was some misunderstanding as to her ability to be there, but certainly they could be there, that he would speak with the security person, actually the security personnel at the event, as well as the coordinator of that event, so hopefully we wouldn't have this misunderstanding in the future.
Why did they need a gun?
I don't know that he was armed.
He was armed, and I have the
He's
people in
armed,
the
then,
group
I mean,
can
you-
validate.
I'd like an answer to that one.
Okay.
By staff sometime.
We will get the answers, and stay tuned.
Security,
Okay. Thank you. Mike Mohill, followed by Alyssa Resnick and Irina Raylanitis.
Mr. Mayor, council members, Had a little September surprise this morning. I read in the Glendale News Press that our proletariat city councilman, Ms. Steffian, has decided to step down. I'm sorry to see that. Your voice will be missed at City Council, sir. Your contractor background in construction helps answer a lot of the questions when it comes to building things.
His list will be shorter.
That's right. Actually, I'm here to report a sad event in my life. Friday night, my wife and I took a walk down Chevy Chase Drive past the hospital. And on the way going down, my wife did a slip and fall. Big time. Okay. She ended up going to the Adventist Hospital with a cast. She's been on pain medication since Friday night. The city says they have no money to fix the potholes of the sidewalks. But yet we found time and money to buy a piece of property called Rockhaven for $8.5 million. And now we're going to find money to build an aquarium center. But yet we don't have any money to do the aquatic center. But yet we have no money to fix the potholes in the city or the sidewalk that are uplifting. Sure, we have programs going on all the time. But instead of being an aggressiveness on this sidewalk repair, we don't. And I have a wife who's missed already 2 days of work, spent the weekend in bed. She's been in crutches, wheelchair. My life is messed up because the city has not done its function. Sidewalk repair. Now, I also took a walk from the hospital down to Chevy Chase, which is where the bridge overpass is of the 134. The sidewalks in more than one area was broken. There is debris all over the place. No one does any type of police maintenance as far as trash is concerned. It looks like an abandoned area by the overpass of the freeway. I brought pictures with me. I'm not high tech, so I can't show on the screen. But you can look at these pictures. My wife is in a soft cast. One leg is in purple. Okay. With one head took some pictures today. You can see the ruler that shows you that a tree had uprooted the sidewalk on both sides of the tree, so that the sidewalk is not even. Why are we not taking care of our infrastructure? You know, before you go out and buy things, you should take care of your house first. That's falling apart, and our city's falling apart. I don't want to, Los Angeles, city of Compton, those are horrible cities because they don't have the money to fix their sidewalks and their streets and their infrastructure. But we do have the money. But where are we putting our money? Not where it counts. Safety, safety, and safety. No. Rockhaven, $8.5 million and still counting. An aquatic center. Kids need to swim. Great. I'm all for that. But we do those things after the basic services. Potholes, sidewalk repair. I'm leaving you with these pictures. You can, again, I don't have a digital camera to give all the pictures up there, but you can see the picture. Where the ruler is where you can see the raised up to 3 inches. The sidewalk is raised by the roots of a tree. How would you feel if your spouse was in bed for the last 4 nights and says, leave the room, I have to be by myself because I'm in pain? Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Mohill. As a general inquiry, Mr. Zern, what can you tell us about? Yeah.
Well, I can tell you this, in less than a half hour ago, you approved yet another sidewalk upgrade program. We have quite bit of sidewalk in the city, and we have a very healthy 44,000 plus mature trees. So this is an ongoing effort to try to keep the sidewalks in good condition. I think you all know it's been a mission of ours for quite some time, for at least the last 5 years, to spend extra money in the sidewalk program. So I'll tell you, we probably go about $1 million a year towards our sidewalks. In fact, to the extent that I have recommended to the city manager for the last several years to take money away from certain aspects of the street repair to put them into the sidewalk repair. And we are in every district, every year, both with our in-house crews and with contracts, making sidewalk repairs.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Yusuf.
As you know, a couple of weeks ago, I had to also go to the hospital, and as I was walking down on Chevy Chase area, those sidewalks are, have been lifted because of the trees. I would like you to include that somehow in some of these contracts. There is a couple of parking lots there, surface parking lots right by the hospital. There's awful lot of elderly people who park their vehicles and they walk to the clinic or they walk to the hospital, and the condition is such that you could easily trip and fall. I mean, easily. It's not one of those things that is little, you just have to lift your foot off instead of shuffling it. And if I wasn't watching, I could have easily tripped myself too. So if there's a way we could do that, especially in areas where we have a lot of elderly people who are walking with walkers and so on and so forth to get to the doctor, that'll be very helpful.
We will definitely take a look at that area.
All right. Thank you. Alyssa Resnick and Irina help me.
Royalinitis.
Royalinitis. Thank you.
Like Royal.
Oh, Royalinitis. Royalinitis. R-O-Y-L. All right.
Good evening, Mayor Draymond, councilmen, and staff. I'm Elisa Resnick, the library supervisor at Brand Library, and on behalf of the library and our support group, the Associates of Brand Library, I'm very pleased to announce our next exhibition at Brand Library Art Galleries, Brand 37 Works on Paper, Here and Now. This is the 37th annual National Juried Exhibition produced by the Associates of Brand Library. 85 works on paper in a variety of media, including photography, pen and ink, various print techniques, watercolors, and mixed media, have been selected. The Brand Associates Purchase Award and other awards totaling more than $5,000 will be presented during an opening reception on this Saturday, September 27th, from 4 to 7 p.m. The awards have been made possible by generous donations from the community, associates members, local merchants, and other affiliated art organizations. This exciting exhibition features the work of 62 artists and many local residents from Glendale, Los Angeles, Santa Monica, Long Beach, San Diego, various San Gabriel and San Fernando Valley cities, and other parts of California, in addition to works from artists across the country. This year's juror, Kim Abelies, was asked to make selections based on the technical quality of the work and the successful expression of the exhibition's theme, Here and Now. Ms. Abelies had a certain vision for the exhibition during the selection process. She states the show has a dark ambiance. Even when humor or beauty is at the core of a drawing, print, sculpture, photograph, or painting, it is a humor that is slyly grim or a beauty that is painfully sublime. Many of the works clearly express a specific idea while maintaining a mysterious edge. The annual National Juried Exhibitions have been organized and sponsored by the Associates of Brand Library since 1971. The current organizer of this annual exhibition is Associates Board member Irina Royalinitis, standing next to me. Irina, with the support from the Associates Board of Directors, has been instrumental in organizing this year's exhibition, soliciting donations for the awards, and publicizing its presence nationally to attract artists to participate. I'm pleased to have Irina join me tonight, and she'll continue with this announcement.
Well, I'm very happy to talk about the exhibit. Our juror, Kim Abelies, is really world known, and she has come onto the national scene with her smog collection series, which is using smog for making print plates. And she's showing worldwide. Now she has a show coming up in Cuba. And her work is in collections of the Museum of Contemporary Art, the LA County Museum, and she has been awarded a whole bunch of grants from the California Arts Council, the J. Paul Getty Trust Fund for the Visual Arts, and others. And we were able to get her as a juror. And as an aside, some artists who heard about her said, "Oh, my gosh, you got her as a juror? Anyway, this exhibit is a major fundraising event for our show in that the people who apply pay an application fee. We solicit funds from businesses. The brand associates are sort of the umbrella organization, and the associates support not only this art show but music and art programs at the Brand Library, and they've been doing it for 40 years. So really this has been an ongoing effort. The associates have worked for over 40 years. We have this gorgeous gallery at the Brand Libraries. So please do come to our opening show, which is going to be this Saturday from 4 to 7, and the show will continue until October 31st. And here's an invitation and card. This piece of art, which was a large photograph, I'd say 36 by 24, was the Purchase Award last year. This year we have another Purchase Award, and that will go on the card next year. So please do come. We'd love to see all of you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Barry Allen, followed by Christian Arbit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, wherever you may be. Oh, you're over there. I see. And council, staff, and of course the public. I'm Barry Allen. I want to preface my comments, first of all, with Shana Tova. I think Mr. Draymond and Mr. Howard would understand that. Shana Tova. Got it. I want to preface my comments that I understand that the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, is provided to us by an outside auditor. And I also understand that that outside auditor takes the numbers that they're given. They don't do forensic accounting. So I know that we have all looked at the 2007 CAFR, and we looked at the construction in progress, and we saw that there was $417,000 that was spent on the chess park year ending June 30th of 07. And today we finally got the information from the city attorney's office, and it appears that these were adjustments from 2003 and 2004. And the question that I have, and I know that we have those here who can speak to these issues, is why did it take 4 years to catch these errors, make the corrections, and how in reality does it really impact the amounts of money that we have spent? Did we make all the adjustments that are necessary? And by the way, there were several other areas that we noted when we started the audit on the construction in progress, because we noted that there were some issues there, and a lot of those issues had to do with the financial activities of the city and the fact that these numbers just didn't look right. But no one else is really looking at these things. And I think that we're in some, as I mentioned earlier, some very tough times. And we're looking at, what is it now? We want to buy the Chevy Chase Golf Course, the Chevy Chase Country Club. That's going to be the next on the, I guess that was in a closed session, so the public isn't aware of that yet. But my understanding is there's quite some interest, and I thank you, Mr. Weaver. But there were opportunities to buy that at $6.1 million, and now I understand the price will go up, considering that it's in escrow right now, not by the city. So we see a number of other issues that are happening, and one of the other very important things is
is our investment money safe? We have about, $430 or $440 million that we have invested under our charter that says we put these in very conservative investment vehicles. Two of those conservative investment vehicles were Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, of which I think we have about $280 million invested there. Now, is that money safe? If it is safe, how do we know it's safe? Because that would be quite a shock if the government defaulted to Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and whoever owns them now, I guess it's the taxpayers, defaults on those bonds. And it could leave the city in some very rough financial straits. And I think now is the time, and by the way, I've talked to a couple of landlords, a couple of developers. One of the landlords says, I have a problem. I had 4 of my big tenants have their checks bounced. He said, and a realtor that I spoke to said, I put together 26 offers on properties in the city. We couldn't get any bank financing, and these are people with good credit. So these are things that we really have to take into consideration as we get ready to spend our money. We have to renegotiate contracts. I know it's pretty much of a lark that we're not going to do that on the consent calendar, but this council owes it to the people who have elected you to be more fiscally responsible, especially today when we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. I'm Barry Allen. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Allen. Christian Arbet, followed by Margaret Hammond.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and fellow councilmen. My name is Christian Arbid, resident of Glendale, and first and foremost, I want to thank you for your time last week, for allowing me a few minutes of your time to speak about the foreclosures. And I just wanted to give you a quick little snapshot between last Tuesday and this Tuesday. Foreclosures in Glendale last week were at 539. Foreclosures as of this morning in the city of Glendale are 530. Now, you may say that's only 9 homeowners that have been pulled out of foreclosure, but 9 from Glendale and 10 from Burbank and 15 from Pasadena may add up, and the 1,300 foreclosures that we have in California every single day that may help diminish that number. So just a quick reminder to the mayor and the council. You guys mentioned a few months ago about, or Mr. Yusefian mentioned possibly doing a workshop. I just wanted to see if we can possibly keep that in mind and see if we can maybe develop some sort of a workshop for homeowners where they can get free advice or what have you as to how to retain their homes and stay in their properties. Second item real quick, and maybe Mr. Mayor, you can help me direct it, maybe it goes to Mr. Zern or not. An incidental item, but a few years I've been driving around this city, and you drive down Emerald Isle, and you see a street called Grange Mount. And it's Grange Mount, but not Grange Mont. And the street sign is Mont, M-O-N-T. But the street itself is Grange Mount. So if you go to the city of Los Angeles or the county records or the tax assessor, it's Grange Mount, M-O-U-N-T. But when you drive down the street, it's misspelled with M-O-N-T. And so I just wanted to see maybe you can give me some direction on that. It's kind of like driving down San Fernando and you see San Fernanda, or Glen Oaks and you call it Glen Oaks. So I wanted to see if we can maybe just take a look at that and see if we can possibly change the sign because it is disturbing to some homeowners and, the UPS guy and you go on MapQuest and it's M-O-U-N-T. So small item, but if we can just look into that, I'd greatly appreciate it. Or maybe if I'm wrong, Mr. Zern can tell me, but on the grant deeds of all the homes, on the tax assessor roll, on the Los Angeles County, it's M-O-U-N-T, but maybe the city sees it as a little bit different. So a little clarification would be great, and I thank you guys very, very much for an eventful evening. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Arbit. Mr. Zern, what does your dictionary tell us? What does your street atlas tell us?
M-O-N-T. So we will look at that, and maybe we need to talk to the assessor's office to make sure they have the right spelling, but...
In which case, we may have an extra vowel to sell, so...
Put into spare reserve, an extra year.
All right. Yes, Mr. Yusefi.
Mr. Mayor, also I would like to let the gentleman know that the issue of the foreclosures is on the agenda for October 18 from 2 to 5, and that is one of those items, and we do have a speaker who's going to deal with that.
Okay. Margaret Hammond, followed by Nancy Kent.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff, and audience. My name is Margaret Hammond. First off, I would like to say that I did talk to Bill Evans this morning, and Betty is doing very well for any of her friends that are out there, because I know I've had a couple of people call me wanting to know if I had talked, and I stopped by, and Bill was off work today. So he said she's doing very well. She's in therapy and expecting to progress with her therapy. My main thing that I would like to talk about, and I spoke about it before, is about the police SROs being removed from the middle schools. You know, I really feel they're really important, and that particularly at Roosevelt. We have a lot of young people in that area that belong to gangs and that are involved in various problems, have various home problems, and so forth. And in particular, I think the SRO at that school was very important in guiding a lot of those young people, you know, into a better path or somebody they could talk to and so forth. I do hope that some way we could find the money. I don't know, because we're building and have built several low-income housing, and there are going to be more in that area. So, therefore, there will probably be more young people that will have need of guidance and advice from a SRO. The other thing that I wanted to say, I went up and looked at Chevy Chase where they're doing the reservoir, and I was going to tell Mr. Najarian, hey, the hole is already dug for a big, huge pool up there. We might be able to combine the efforts or something. Man, that's a big hole, that Chevy Chase reservoir. And regarding coyotes, if they're like dogs, and they are, of course, very smart, too. But one of the things I have found out in the past with dogs that are pests is I get my hose out, my garden hose, and spray them full on, and man, they take off. I don't know whether to work with coyotes, but it's a thought. Or, I don't know, what about slingshots? Are they illegal in Glendale? Oh, they are. That's too bad. Okay, that's just my thoughts. I did want to mention one more thing, and that was regarding the Windsor Club. Marion Lemke, who was a friend of mine, we, from that Al-Anon group many years ago, were the ones that started the home for battered women. It actually opened we opened it over in Pasadena, paid the rent and so forth on a little court for a lot of the women that needed help and needed somewhere to go. She was a very active lady, Marion Lemke, wonderful person, and I do have to say was a very good friend. I miss her very much. And one more thing. Mr. Zern does a great job, really, and when you tell him about problems that are really important. For instance, I know it doesn't sound important, but I had a couple of beautiful California oaks on my front, but they had grown down, and people on the street were, you know, having to duck, and then the cars that were parked along under them were getting all torn up, and I knew I couldn't let anybody touch them, a gardener or anything, and Mr. Zern responded because I explained to him that it was really a hazard for people walking on the street because they're prickly. You know, those trees are scratchy. So, and he took care of it very well, and I thank him for that. We want to kick him all the time, but, you know, he's really a nice guy. And the other one is large item pickup. I have to tell you that when I called them, boy, they were there within 2 or 3 hours on my area, because we have people that dump huge quantities, I guess, when they move out of apartments or something, and they seem to sit there. But as soon as you call, I call, and tell them, there's really some big, large furniture out there sitting in big piles. And I have to tell you, they do a great job of picking up. So, when we want to complain about our services, we also have to say, hey, we do have wonderful services in Glendale. We really have other cities, we can put them to shame. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Kent.
Nancy Kent, resident of Glendale. Residents were very well represented by this council last week during the Pacific Park pool agenda item. After the public comment period, I was disappointed by how much the consultant was focused on designing it as a revenue-generating project, but council members and the mayor changed this focus back to a public recreation project. In the 1950s, I believe admission at Verdugo Plunge was only 25 cents, and I hope admission to the new pool will be comparably low. Also, last week, Evelyn Hansen suggested photovoltaic solar panels on the shade features, and it sounded like the council will work to try to get these. Residents were well represented. The consultant suggested that a surprisingly large portion of the pool was to be a very shallow shelf. The council dumped that idea, and again, residents were well represented. It may be too late to give further input on the pool, but nevertheless, if it's possible, can there be a small area, perhaps the lane closest to the steps, that's 3 feet deep, because 5 feet is too deep for little kids to stand in? I think the consensus was this is to be a community pool and not just a racing competition pool. Next pool question. Is it set in stone that the existing tot lot has to be relocated? It already has a spraying water area with lots of little kids playing in it in hot weather. Since so many people are disappointed with the huge hot concrete plaza there, is it possible to just replace the plaza area with the pool project without relocating the existing tot lot and its plumbing? It is discouraging to taxpayers to see money spent to remove or relocate relatively new playground equipment. Thank you for considering these suggestions. Oh, and I have time to also thank the city for some sidewalk repairs. I've been meaning to thank the city for quite a while. Adams Street between, I think, Doran and Chevy Chase, many blocks, was repaired, and it was an excellent repair job, leaving all of the sidewalk that was decent, but just patching up, putting new sidewalk where it was needed, and it was needed very bad. And thank you for doing a good job without tearing up everything and replacing everything.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. Okay, that was our last speaker card. I will close oral communications. Mr. Kasaki, and I know we have one piece of new business. Mr. Yusefian.
I think Mr. Weaver had his hand.
Yes, he has that particular motion.
Oh.
I thought you had something in addition.
Yeah, I was going to talk about some of the comments.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes. And then we'll go to Councilmember Najarian.
Thank you. There was question asked about our portfolio. I will tell you that as some of the events have taken place in the last couple of weeks, it's probably unprecedented in this country's history that I have been alive. I think maybe something like this happened in 1929, but I wasn't even around. Nevertheless, I did take an opportunity to call our city treasurer and ask him, because city treasurer sends us a monthly report as where our money is and how much it's earning and so on and so forth. I will tell you that the $280 million that was quoted, it's not all in Fannie Mae's or Freddie Mac's. A lot of that is in federal banks, and so they are protected because they're owned by the federal government and federal mortgage guarantees. There is a small chunk that is part of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Nevertheless, these are bonds, They're not stocks. And as Hank Paulson mentioned, they are going to be protected. They are owned by the federal government, and there's a big chunk of that owned by many institutions, not just the city of Glendale. So I will let the public go sleep nice tonight knowing that that money is safe, so we don't have to worry about that. On the issue that was brought up about the play area, that was part of the reason I asked what it would cost to remove it and what it cost to build it. Because the part of the expense of the pool is to remove that whole section. And I know when they poured all that concrete, based on the experience we had with Adams Hill, the concrete was about 8 inches thick, and it cost a lot of money to put it down. It cost a lot of money to take it out. It was $500,000 for them, approximately, to take all that stuff out. So my question was, I wanted to know, would it be financially prudent for us not to do this and maybe go across the street to purchase some other property to put the pool in, depending on what the cost is. If you're going to spend $500,000 tearing it out, another $500,000 putting it in, there's $1 million. Would it be cheaper to put it somewhere else for $1 million? Can you buy a piece of parcel of land for $1 million to put this in or not? He did not have any of that information, and that's one of the reasons I asked those specific questions, because it was done fairly recently, and 2002, I think, was when it was finished, and so that's a lot of money. So I wanted to know how much it cost, and I guess we will find out, Mr. Mayor, when that item comes back with those information.
We will indeed. Councilmember Najarian.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to know from the city attorney whether it's a crime to mislead Mr. Allen on these red herring issues, such as buying the Chevy Chase Country Club. Is it a crime to misrepresent something that has come out of closed session and to lead someone from the public on a course of misdirection? It's certainly a crime to disclose what did go on in closed session, but isn't it a crime to misrepresent something that did not go into closed session, as actually have been in closed session, as someone obviously did to Mr. Allen? I just don't think it's fair to him that he comes out and makes these comments based on perhaps something that one of us has or has not said to him. It's just not fair to him or the public in general. Is that a crime?
Sounds more like a statement and a rhetorical question. Not a crime that I'm aware of. The only potential violation of the Brown Act is the unauthorized disclosure of confidential communications out of closed session. I'm not aware of a recent closed session involving a discussion of potential acquisition of real property in connection with the Chevy Chase Country Club, except for the reservoir.
Well, I wasn't either, but that's my point, is that it certainly leads. I mean, if Chevy Chase Canyon, I could see Mr. Murray right now. You're what? You're buying this? What are you going to put here? A dump, a playground, condos, and here we go again. Well, it'll consume perhaps hours of time in our next council meeting, and we'll be saying, no, nothing like that ever happened, nothing like that ever happened. So, but if someone did lead him astray, I'd like Mr. Allen to disclose who led him astray from a possible closed session item. I don't hear anything, but perhaps we'll read about it at Vanguard next publication.
Okay, anything else, Mr.
Thank you, that's it for me.
Okay, Mr. Weaver.
I would say the same thing. Maybe Mr. Allen's on a fishing expedition, depending whether we said we were or we weren't. That would give him some information. I do know that members of the private sector are looking at Chevy Chase, doing their due diligence. It's certainly not this city. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions or input regarding oral communications?
Can I ask a question from Mr. Weaver?
Of course.
I'm sorry, I'm dumbfounded. Dumbfounded.
Not dumbfounded, dumbfounded.
That'll
be Chapter 11.
Chapter 11.
Do not.
Your book is getting thicker.
Do not belittle.
Yeah. Chevy Chase is for sale?
I didn't say that.
You said that somebody's doing due diligence?
Well-
To do what? To buy?
Anybody has property, people can check to see if it's for sale.
Oh, okay.
Maybe they are, maybe they aren't.
All right, thank you. I didn't know.
Okay.
I don't know everything.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Kasakian,
Is there any new business, Mr. Mayor?
yes, there is a piece of...
I would like to
Mr.
move
Weaver.
that pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.1, parens A, parens 5, and Charter Article 8, Section 1, the council hereby approves and promotes Christine Godinez to the position of Senior Assistant City Attorney, Glendale Water and Power for the City of Glendale, and further that a written copy of this motion be transcribed, certified, and delivered by the city clerk to the office of the Civil Service Commission of the City of Glendale as and for written statement required by Article 24, Section 5, Subsection 2 of the Charter for the suspension of competition for said office.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other debate? There is not. Mr. Kasakian, if you would, please.
Council members Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero, Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian,
Aye.
Mayor Draymond.
Yes.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. We are adjourned
Good luck.
at
Congratulations, Christine.
9:35.